Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for July 5th, 2023. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on all podcast platforms and applications. And you can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. Click the red box that says Sponsors Podcasts, and you can sign up for one-time or reoccurring donations. No obligations whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears. Joining alongside, as always, your other co-host, Case Lowe. In Case, Kobe World 2023. It's behind us now. How are you doing, bud?
It's behind us. Well, you know, it's a glorious time of the year every year. I'm doing well. I feel well rested. I spent, of course, I took a classic Rich Craigcation. A Craigcation, I believe is the correct way of pronouncing that, where I did travel on the biggest weekend of the year for what we do. I was away from my laptop for most of the weekend, did not finish Kobe World in full until yesterday, Tuesday, July 4th, a full 2 days after the show took place, which was a maddening process for me, but I enjoyed the little bit of time I got off from the shoot job and from life in general. How was your birthday?
It was really nice.
I'm now realizing I didn't wish you a happy birthday, and I feel terrible about that. Happy birthday, Mike.
Oh, thank you. Don't feel bad about it. I kind of sleeper cell my birthdays. I've always been.
Yeah, you're a covert birthday guy. And before you finish that thought, look, I'm not a birth week. I'm not a birth month. I'm not a make a big deal about it. But if people want to wish me a happy birthday, they are more than welcome to. I don't enjoy the anti-attention seekers on their birthday. I find that arguably to be more off-putting than birth month people.
Well, for me, I mean, my birthday is like right next to the 4th of July. So I was never, it was something that like I usually go to baseball games on my birthday. So
Yeah.
like it's less me being mawkish. It's more me being like, oh, okay, that's cool. And like, I did get something case over my birthday where I will be receiving something that I know will be very much of your interests.
Okay.
I have my lovely partner got me a pair of cowboy boots that I went and got fitted for.
Oh, I need to see a Mike Spears cowboy boot photo shoot immediately with the tracksuit.
Oh yeah, no, tracksuit gets tucked in on those bad boys. But no, it was nice. Actually got to go see a little bit of wrestling history on my birthday. So to go get the boots, there's a part of Fort Worth called the Stockyards, and it's kind of a known thing. It was the Stockyards because that's where the cattle drives would end before they would put cows on trains to go to Chicago. It was one of those things. But one of the really cool things about it is that the Stockyards Coliseum is where World Class was every week, and I got to walk by it. It still exists, this building. It's one of those really cool WPA like buildings that like grew up in. It's still there, and I was like, oh, that's where the Von Erichs were. My girlfriend had no interest whatsoever.
Don't you love that when you walk by a building that has meaning in wrestling? And it's just like, I think about that, and I haven't been to the Frontier Fieldhouse for a Ring of Honor show in 7 years. Last one I went to was early 2016. And there obviously they haven't been shows there and just about that long. But every time I would line up at the Frontier Fieldhouse, I mean, it's a community recreation complex and gym. And every time I would line up there, I just think like, wrestling has literally changed because of this building. Like Joe versus Punk 2 and Blood Generation versus Doofixer happened here. That is insane that people work here, use this facility, and drive by here every day, and they just have no idea.
Oh yeah, and I think it's also a case where for the two of us, like it was 2 years ago when I was over in Chicago for Labor Day, going past the Congress Theater, as decrepit as it was, I was with Patrick Cosmos, and he was like, oh yeah, I know you're a DGUSA pervert, so we're going to a bar over here. The Congress is like 1 block away. And I was just like, that's where Yamato versus Bryan Danielson happened. Pardon me.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And Patrick Cosmos, shout out, a man who I live in the same city as. I know him through online. I can't believe we're not in real life friends because he has all of my interests and more. But yeah, no, every time. So the Congress Music Theater, this is the biggest episode all year. Real quick side note about Chicago music venues and how they relate to wrestling history. So the Congress Theater is on the same block as a venue that is now known as Concord Music Hall, which is unequivocally the worst venue in Chicago. This is the best live music city in the country. Austin will stick their nose in that fight. Austin is wrong. Chicago is as good as it gets because we have all the venues you could possibly want. We have festivals, we have club dates, we have a great United Center is great for concerts. I've been to a few there. They've all been fantastic. Concord Music Hall sucks shit. It is like watching a concert in a steakhouse. They designed this building and they said, how many obstacles can we put in front of the stage? We're going to put 2 giant brick pillars right in people's sight lines so they can't see. And in the middle of the venue, we are going to build a glass bar so that the bar is not in the complete back of the venue or on a side. It is essentially in the middle of the venue. And it gets in everybody's way. There's no such thing as a good sightline there. It's awful. And every time I go there, I'm grumpy. But then when you walk by Concord, or at least on the way there, you pass the Congress Theater. And I always smile and I think about the Dragongate USA shows that happen there. And then I'm in a little bit of a better mood before I go to the worst venue in Chicago.
From the way you describe it, there's no way they can book anything like hardcore or punk there, right?
But they do. Maybe
how
not.
Those pillars.
Well, that's the thing is that it's not a good spot. I mean, I talked to somebody recently who saw. I was not at the show. They saw a great punk band there, and specifically a great live band, and they were like, yo, they weren't that good. Like, the atmosphere was all off. Nobody was really moving around. It was kind of a bummer. And then the next time that band was in town, they played the Metro, which is the most iconic venue here.
Right.
People know it from the Smashing Pumpkins live set, 93. They know it from all the things Rise Against have done there. Prince has played there. Metallica played there 2 years ago. Green Day played there last year. It's the spot in Chicago. And this punk band rolled into the Metro, and it was lit beyond belief. It was like, oh no, this is what a venue is. This is exactly what it should be. No, it's a bad time, but it's next to the Congress Theater, which always makes me smile.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's something like whenever I think about like bad venues, like I don't know, like the little bit of charm and the idea that like some venue owner must have to be like, it'd be a great idea. Let's have a giant bar in the middle of everything. And I have to imagine that it's so dumb that do they at least work both sides of it?
Well, okay. So what do you mean by that?
Like you say it's in the middle of it. Is there only like one or two wells there, or do they have one on like on each side?
I think there's only one or two. I don't think it's like a full. Course. Yeah, it's a terrible venue. It's one of those. I mean, there's been shows that look cool that I've opted to not go to because they're there, and the few shows that I do go to there, I'm always way less excited than if they were at a building of a similar capacity size, but just in a different spot in the city. That place sucks. Real quick, relating to Kobe World as we sort of transition in here, can I tell you the story about how I watched the main event live in real time this year?
Okay, how did you pull this off?
So, if you didn't listen last week, I was on vacation with my girlfriend, went to her hometown, stayed with her mom for a few days. It's the first vacation I've taken in 4 years. She really wanted to do this trip, and I was stoked about it too. And I also, Kansas City kicks ass. I had a great time. But I was telling her on Saturday, we were out on the town. I was like, hey, so like, I'm probably just going to go home and go to bed. Like there's like this big wrestling show tomorrow. And, Mike and I are going to talk about it on the podcast. And I'd like to be able to watch some of it live. And it's not that she was perturbed by it. She just didn't care. She go do whatever you need to do. I was like, so I'm going to set an alarm for like 5 o'clock in the morning and wake up, and you just go back to bed, and I'm just going to watch the show. And she didn't love that, but I was like, all right, whatever. And then luckily we thought the show was going to be like a 5.5 hour show, like an old Wrestle Kingdom. Turns out Dragongate sped the process up, and I woke up in the middle of the night at around 3 o'clock to pee. And I thought, well, I'm up. Let me flip on Kobe World. And I was doing that right as they were going to intermission to set up the cage. So, okay, I'm up. I made it basically a pillow fort next to her bed so that my computer light wouldn't be blinding her or getting in her eyes and waking her up. I watch the cage match. I take diligent notes. I am ready to go back to bed. And her dog is now on my side of the bed. I try to move the dog won't wake up. I try to shake the dog won't wake up. I try to pick the dog up, dog is too heavy and too planted in the bed. And I spent the rest of the night, I gave up at that point because I didn't want to wake her up because it was 4:30 in the morning. I slept on the floor for the next 4 or 5 hours while the dog slept in my spot on the bed. But it was all worth it for Kobe World to watch the main event unspoiled. I have no complaints.
Hey, our dogs have like the unique ability somehow to. I have a king size bed case, and like Pudge is a bigger dog, but Kings's dog Wells is a multi-poo. Like it doesn't take space. Somehow the two of them managed to make me into like a folded up like ruffle chip is like my body shape because of these two dogs half the time. So I totally get that, but
it's not an ideal situation. But you know what was the main event of Kobe World?
Yeah, so Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival 2023 came to us July 2nd from Kobe World Kinen Hall. Let's get the particulars out of the way first. Case 5150, super no vacancy, full house. Just like we were from our shows with Jay talking about attendance, 5,000 was always like the number bandied about. And I was like looking at a native Twitter account case, and they were like listing off scenarios, and their last scenario was if it's bigger than 5,000, unqualified success. And that seems to be the overall kind of vibe about this, the coming out of Kobe World, at least business wise.
I look, we're gonna spend a second on attendance because there's just a million different things to talk about. First of all, did that number surprise you? What were your thoughts when you saw 5150? And to note, a sellout. They sold every ticket available.
Yeah, looking at the crowd, and at least for me, like, I woke up the next day. I watched Kobe World the afternoon and evening of the second, but I did not hear attendance when I first woke up on the second. And I was seeing photos. I was like, oh, that looks really good. Maybe that's 3 or 4, back at it. But I didn't realize 5150 Supernova vacancy, complete sellout. And it's something that that is that there's qualifiers to this one. But then the day 5150 is a huge number, even if it took cage match, Hiromu, Shingo, Kikuta versus Yoshioka. That it's something that if you put that foot forward and you're trying to make that step, 5150 is kind of that's what you're hoping to get when you do that. And I think that's accurate of reality as it is right now in the industry.
I asked someone in the company what their thoughts were on World after the fact, and they said, and I quote, "Good show, great crowd, incredible ending, worth popping a bottle for, but I'd save the real good stuff until we can do it again next year." Or I'm sorry, I'd save the real good stuff until we can do it without a cage match plus big stars, maybe just big stars next year, end quote. So in the room, as people like to say, in the room, an unmitigated success. This is, I mean, look, I thought this show would do well, and I think it's really important to put in perspective, this wasn't 5150 in the building to see Hiromu. This was a card that was drawn in part by Hiromu. If you want to give a real small sliver of that pie to Shingo, I'll give you that, but you got to give just as much to the Dreamgate match if you're going to do that. This was a card drawn by Hiromu and by the cage match. This cage match was over in the building. It was over in the build too. It was over in the TV towns. It was over in the small buildings. I know you don't keep up as much on the YouTube stuff as I do. The YouTube matches leading up to this cage with Diamante and Ultimo for the last month all felt super, super hot. So this number surprised me because I didn't think it would be that high, but I also didn't think we were venturing into the 3,000 range. This honestly, this feels like the appropriate number for this show.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the ultimate takeaway. And there is a reality that because of the cage, they weren't able to sell as many tickets. That has to be if we're listing reasons for this, there's less tickets on the floor because of the cage. But still, it's
yes,
still over 5K.
Go ahead. Yes,
it's still over 5K with that.
Okay, so let's look at this building historically, because I think if you are a golden era Dragongate fan, 2014 to 2016 lapsed, you might see that number and shudder, oh my God, only 5,000 fans in this building. But let's put this into perspective for just a second. First of all, going backwards, 2 shows last year combined, they did 4,430. 1,915 fans for the Ultima show, 2,515 fans for Kobe World proper. Abysmal numbers all the way around. Last year, New Japan Burning Spirit, with the 2 matches being Carl Anderson versus Hiroshi Tanahashi and Will Ospreay versus David Finlay. I don't know what the restrictions in place were at that time. They did 3,150. Going back to 2021, this being World and Speedstar Final, Speedstar Final notably drawing 3,580, a great number as it was a retirement show during COVID. Those were the only things that drew during COVID. Combined attendance, 5,976. That puts you in perspective of where things have been during COVID. Obviously, you just think about that rationally for a second. You think about the business toll that's taken, let alone the G1 shows from 2020 and 2021 that did half of 5150. They were doing 2,500 fans. We were like, oh, that's pretty good. Look at all the people that Shingo and Ospreay brought to the building. We were just in this awful hellscape. Let's look at the pre-COVID numbers for a second. And with Dragongate, we have a smaller pool to sample from. We have 2019 in 2018. 2019 did 5,365. That was with Ben K versus Pac on top and the return of Ultimo Dragon as the big matches. In 2018 did 4,952 with Eita versus Dragon Kid and Masato Yoshino versus Shingo as the 2 big matches. So Dragongate beating a pre-COVID number is a win in and of itself, but to come close to 2019, which we all felt like was a hot show with a great crowd and a big payoff in the end, that is a win also.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there's a reason we're only talking about 2018, 2019. Dragongate worked all numbers up until the OWE split. Did they sell out the buildings? Yes. Do we know what the real attendance was? Kind of, but do we know it was not like 9,650? Probably not.
So 2018, we knew, and I believe it was the exact quote going around was, this is the least amount of people they've had in the building since X. And that X was, maybe 1999, maybe 2000. It was very early in Dragon System history, the last time they had a world that drew that poorly. But it was also jarring because that show, like I said, did 49.52. In the year prior, with YAMATO versus an ice cold, ice age, fucking ice brick T-Hawk, that show claimed 9,800 fans. And Mike, do you believe for a second that show drew 9,800 fans?
No, I don't believe that show drew 8,000 fans.
I'm not sure it did 5,000.
Right, yeah, and that is like the overall kind of thing about that is like a lot of these numbers were like, you brought up 2018. I have a quote from someone within the company. In 2018, yes, it was that lowest attendance, but they also made more money on that show than they did any year previous to that due to business differences, new sponsorships, and a lack of comps. So it looked bad, but it was something that at the end of the day, they're like, hey, we actually did pretty good then.
And to put it in perspective of, okay, where's the business leader at? Where's New Japan? Because I did not realize prior to this weekend how few companies ran this building. For some reason, I thought Noah had a big show here every year. I thought maybe DDT, despite always struggling to draw outside of Tokyo, I thought, hey, maybe DDT's run a show here. No, they have not. But looking at prior, and this is pre-COVID New Japan attendance numbers in this building, 6,148 Destruction in Kobe 2019 with Tetsuya Naito versus Jay White and Hiroki Goto versus Shingo in the big two matches there. 2018 Destruction in Kobe. This was 64-54 with Kushida versus Bushi and Kazuchika Okada versus Hiroshi Tanahashi in your main event. That is the biggest number that I've seen on record of the real attendance era in that building. Makes sense. It's Okada versus Tanahashi. You go back to 2017 Destruction in Kobe, main event Kenny Omega versus Juice Robinson. And this is Omega in 2017 when, he was the wrestler to watch. I mean, literally changing the industry with seemingly every match he had in New Japan. That did 54.82. So Dragongate was 300 fans off of a peak New Japan number. Yes, for New Japan, it's, if we're being generous, a B show, maybe a C show, but an Omega main event, and Dragongate is nearly matching their attendance number with the show post-COVID this year. Another tip in the cap to what Dragongate did here.
Yeah, so I think that it was all pretty remarkable, at least like that. Should we just do a couple overall thoughts before we get into match by match?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I noticed something, and I'm going to do this now before we get into like match by match stuff. I noticed an outcry case during this. I know that you were visiting the delights of Kauffman Stadium, Oklahoma Joe's, all the greats in Kansas City.
I did go to Kauffman. I would put it as a 4.25 star stadium. Really enjoyed my stay there. Go ahead.
Yeah, but one of the big things I heard was, these matches are super short. And that did happen. We did have a 2-minute opener. And something that really kind of struck me today while doing the Spears Ovation Weekly show was, I feel like I had a thought back in my head. I feel like that's always kind of been the case. So, yes, the matches were in general a lot shorter, but that's generally been the case for matches with a steel cage survival. The last time the last steel cage match was Dead or Alive 2021, of course, the longest match outside of this, and I'm mentioning this one up front first, was the Triangle Gate match between Natural Vibes and Masquerade. Of course, this is the show that had the Shun Skywalker hip hop Kikuta injury, but that was all before this. Like they only adjusted really that match and maybe gave the cage match so more time. So nothing on the undercard was longer than 13 minutes. Let's go to 2020 case. So So we did not have a cage match at Dead or Alive. We had the cage match that year at Dangerous Gate. The longest match other than that was an Open the Twin Gate title match. Other than the cage, that came in at 20 minutes. let's go to 2019. Let's go pre-COVID, case. Dead or Alive 2019, of course, had the Pac versus Dragongate Dreamgate match. It also had the turn for Benkei leading into his Golden Road. Outside of the Dreamgate match, case, the longest match on that show, 14 minutes and 10 seconds. And just putting a finer point on this case, let's take a show before the OWE split. The 2016 Dead or Alive, considered one of the better cage matches in company history, correct?
Yes.
So let's look at the undercard there. The undercard there, the longest match was 16 minutes, a Twin Gate match, T-Hawk and Big R Shimizu versus Eita and Dragon Kid. The other longest match was a Brave Gate match at 12. So the point I'm making, and maybe this is on me somewhat, we should have expected that a lot of that because of the cage match, everything would be kind of sped up. And we did, and instead we didn't, and maybe our expectations were out of whack a little bit.
I think it's an interesting point you made. You know, I can see how people were really thrown off by it because the opening match was 2 minutes long, and it was a damn good 2 minutes, might I say. Loved the opener. Quite honestly, wish it went 12 minutes instead of 2, but that really set the tone for, short match. Oh, Mochizuki didn't get a lot of time there. Okay, things are kind of flying by here, and you know, you could certainly make the argument that a few matches deserve more time than they got, but you're absolutely right. There's a level of history that we now have with these shows that should have told us otherwise.
Yeah, and it does not change the fact that it was a two and a half minute opener. It just was one of those things that I noticed, went and did a little bit of research, but overall, I just wanted to make that point. But overall, I came away with this show, of course, the cage match being the cage match and built up to what it was, it completely knocked it out of the park. It was what we were hoping for. It was the launch of Diamante as we thought it would happen. And in practice, it was a whole lot better than I thought it would go. And the rest of the show, I felt like was somewhat to expectations, if not trending a little bit down. Though there was some really strong stuff up there. I know your review just went up at voicesofwrestling.com. What were your overall takeaways?
I enjoyed this show. I thought it was a good show. Did not think it was a great show. I think if the Dreamgate match was better than it was, everybody's thoughts on this show would be different. But my big takeaway from this is, you know, you and I are normally the first people to watch and review these Dragongate shows. We're normally recording, or I'm normally writing about a show before I've consumed a lot of opinions on it. This obviously was the opposite, and it put me in a different perspective, especially with this being the show that has the most eyeballs on it. I was, not able to watch the show for a while, but I was still very online and consuming opinions even on matches that I hadn't seen. So there were a lot of takes for this show that I was preparing for and expecting. And when I watched the show in reality, I didn't find those claims to be true at all. Whether it be this idea that the crowd were completely dead for all of the new guys, or especially in the Dreamgate match that the crowd didn't care, I found all of that to be untrue. There were also some comments that I read that made it seem like, oh, maybe this match was a disaster. Was Hiromu versus YAMATO just a complete, it fell apart, it was a disaster, they were uncooperative? No, it was, in a weird way, it was kind of the match that I expected it to be, even if it wasn't the match that we all know it could be. It was a greatest hit sort of thing. So maybe just by reading comments, my expectations were lowered for this show, and then in reality, the show ended up being better than that. But I would have a hard time coming away from this show not thinking at the very least that it was a good show. And again, I'm not making the claim that it was great, but I've seen some people really down on this, and to me, that is just very, very odd.
Yeah, it was something that, hey, we did about 7 hours of audio leading up to the show, talked about the card frontwards, backwards, and sideways, and I guess just taking YAMATO and Hiromu, I felt like I was the down person coming into that match, and it kind of was to what I expected with that. But the thing about the crowd, I think that rings really hollow considering how throughout the show, maybe not in the openers and stuff where there really wasn't much time, but you heard the crowd during the Dreamgate. You heard the calls that would happen for even like Minorita during the Triangle Gate, let alone as soon as Shun gave everyone the signal, that crowd in Kobe, all 5150 of them, knew who the babyface was and was behind him. And then, God, the post-match with this, I don't see how you can argue that this was a dead crowd whatsoever.
So let's talk about the cage match. Let's get into it. Main event of the show, 5-way Mascara contra Mascara cage match. Ultimo Dragon, Dragon Kid, Strong Machine J, Diamante, Shun Skywalker. I haven't talked to you about the show. I don't know your thoughts. Big picture, what are your memories of this cage match? What are you taking away 3 days, 4 days removed from the match?
I feel like that this cage match will be remembered, maybe not to 2016 or 2011 standards, but I feel like history will be more kind to this cage match than we are in the present. And that is like, I was 4.5 on it. I thought it was really well done, especially given the limitations and the fact that you had Ultimo in there for about 10 minutes of that match. And everyone was like, there was an effort to get Ultimo out, but they even used that effort of, oh, Ultimo, of course he's going to walk through the door. He's not climbing down the cage. And having that work into, oh, that's when the weapons get introduced to the cage, because everyone's going to let Ultimo out of the cage, but Z-Brats is going to then invade it. And leading into this, where you had Dragon Kid getting the athletic exit, Strong Machine J having his moments, did not necessarily come out of the show as high. I don't think Strong Machine J had the 100% performance that I was hoping for, but like he was like 85%. Like I feel like he got a lot out of that match. And then the Shun Monte part, like it is something that, case I have a page of notes about this match. I've not looked at it once. Like when you have a cage match that you're able to almost, and yeah, this is 4 days after I watched it, but when you have a cage match that you're able to, from memory, you have it etched in your brain to remember those moments, that's not going to go away. And I think that in time, and especially after we see what is in the future for the former Diamante, I think we'll look back at this like in 2028 going, 2023, they did it at Kobe World and it's up there. And that's kind of where I'm already at.
Ryo Saito is a really interesting booker, and he's been in power long enough now to where we know some of his quirks. We know some of the things he does well and some of the things he doesn't do well. A fatal quirk that he's developed is that Ryo Saito likes to get cute with the Dreamgate belt at Kobe World. You think about the history of it. Last year, the Coach Minoru debacle. This year, D-Courage just kind of hanging out en route to a Dreamgate match at World. 2021 worked out because it was YAMATO, KZ, and Shun, and you had a realistic argument for all three of those guys leaving the weekend as Dreamgate champion, but I don't think anybody was in love with the idea of doing the 2 title matches on 2 consecutive nights. Ryo Saito likes to get cute with the Dreamgate belt at World. Where he has found his calling is that twice now, Ryo Saito has created and developed and executed iconic unmasking moments. And Mike Dragongate and Toriumon, they turn 25 next year. And if we were going to create a list of the 25 most iconic moments in Dragongate history, and maybe that will be on voicesofwrestling.com next year, undoubtedly on that list, you would have the Dragon Dia unmasking from 2021, and you would have the Diamante unmasking here. This was what I labeled a forever memory. I will always remember this cage match. And to your point about it aging, this was different than any Dragon Gate cage match we've ever seen. This was, closer to like Flair versus Von Erich. I mean, this was a fight. This was a brawl. This was Jim Crockett doing Mascara contra Mascara. This was a violent cage match. It wasn't wacky. It wasn't zany. It really wasn't Dragon Gate. I mean, this match was slow in parts of it, but I think the slowness actually added to it. It's a match that when it was over, a little bit like you, it really, there were some things there that marinated with me, and it wasn't until the next afternoon, the next day, on my flight home, thinking about what we're going to talk about in the show, where I was like, oh, no, I really liked that. And the Strong Machine J comeback, this happened, and I really liked that. It was a meticulous match where everything they tried to accomplish got over. And the final point I make is I want to go through this match guy by guy, talk about what they did and where they can go from here, as well as notes on Diamante and Strong Machine J, which haven't been reported anywhere. The thing that stood out to me most was that the Ultimo Dragon escape, and the Dragon Kid escape, and the Strong Machine J escape, and the Shun Skywalker escape. I have no notes. I thought they were all brilliantly executed, and that took this match to the next level for me. Every escape mattered, and I have no possible correction, idea, suggestion on how any of these guys could have escaped the cage other than the way they did. A props to everybody involved for nailing that aspect of the match.
Yeah, and it's something that I felt like that this match had phases in a way that maybe only like 2016 I remember the distinct phases of that match like that vividly, but this one, like the intensity ratch up. Like you brought up remembering like Flair Von Erich Reunion Arena. Like this in a way had a level of violence to it that was not dissimilar to original War Game style. And I thought that was really interesting, like to the point of the final elimination. Like there's no way you could walk out of Kobe World, and especially considering he has just been like announced for dates on his next US tour, without thinking like Shun Skywalker is one of the best heels, if not characters, in all pro wrestling. Just with that last elimination, the absolute fucker moment of, oh, I'm tying your mask to the bottom rope. You want to stop me? You're not done a mask. Guess what? You're unmasking either way. Like, God, what a fucker.
Oh, I have a lot to say on Shun Skywalker, but let's go Ultimo first. You know, Ultimo escapes and can't get over the cage, and it seems like it's a moment that is going to be played for comedy. Oh, Ultimo's old, ha ha ha, look at him, you know, he's going to have to use the door. And Dragongate uses that to their advantage. In this match with no seconds and a cage match, they have Z-Brats run in as they're opening the cage door for Ultimo and launch weapons into the ring. And that was the first moment where I was just like, oh, this is something special. You know, that's a small thing, but they could have done it when Dragon Kid was trying to escape. They could have done it when Strong Machine J was on his ascent, but it would have broken the core structure of the match. They found a moment to do it, which was the door opening for Ultimo, and I can't draw it up better than that.
And it was something that, like, everyone in this match, like, even, I know that they aren't a part of the match, but, like, the act of afterwards, Ultimo just, like, climbing over the camera people, and it's just like, no, he's just done with this. And then by the time he's coming back, he's already changed, ready to go, you know? Like, it's just perfect stuff.
So for me, this is the best use of Ultimo Dragon in his Dragongate career. Something I was thinking about earlier today, you know, Ultimo has been in Dragongate now for 4 years. And you think about the mass turnover of the English-speaking audience and how, you know, Dragongate will become somebody's personality for 6 months and then we never hear from them again. There's obviously the people that will shake their fist and go, well, I didn't like the show because it didn't exist in 2016, and I can't help those people. Adapt or die. You've clearly chosen your path of extinction. But you have now a large portion of our listeners, I would imagine, that know Ultimo as a Dragongate wrestler. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Oftentimes, he's just in the touch football match. I find his presence to be welcoming because he's often doing things that are inconsequential outside of the things that we talked about a month ago when this match was first booked, of like, hey, there's this idea maybe that Ultimo was always in these big matches and he's taking over Dragongate and he's pushing himself and this, that, the other thing. And it's not true. The guy's had like 4 big matches in 4 years. He just plans them around Kobe World, which I have, that's, you know, it makes sense from the perspective of he's a legend. This is our biggest show of the year. Let's do something with him. To me, this is the best use of Ultimo. You know, you have his early feud with Eita, which I understood, but I didn't necessarily enjoy. You have some good matches in 2020 against the young guys, Kame, SB Kento, Madoka Kikuta. And then you sort of go through this time period where, okay, now he finds himself in the touch football matches. You know, outside of the Masato Yoshino second to last match, he didn't really do anything of consequence that was great, you know, because the Santo stuff last year was of consequence, but it wasn't great. This was getting maximum value out of Ultimo Dragon, and his return and the headaches that have come with it were entirely worth it for this match alone.
Yeah, and it is something now that we have a path forward with Ultimo, with him and ex Diamante doing whatever, and it's going to be back to touch football kind of thing. It's just now he's kind of someone that he can now tag with more so on undercards than like getting like Kinky Horiguchi out there, you know? And I think that there needs to be kind of an awareness of Ultimo and where he is and what people should expect out of him. I feel like we do a pretty good job of like our expectations with Ultimo. I won't say that they are the lowest, but we know what we're getting with. And I think that if you like take a look at the 4 years like you did, this is how you use them. And I feel like as long as Ultimo is wanting to wrestle and is wanting to be based in Japan for his wrestling, this is what to expect. Maybe there'll be another youngster that he wants to have a mass challenge and a longer feud with, but I can't expect it to like anything that's going to happen with that is going to feel like it is just derisive of this. So
yeah, no, this was it. I mean, I really, from you think about Dead or Alive, you know, he teamed with Doi, and I think it was against Diamante and Kai. Maybe was that the match at Dead or Alive?
It was DK and YAMATO versus Kai and
Kento. No.
Kento,
But this year at Dead or Alive, it was Doi and Ultimo, and it was versus Sun Zebra.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, sorry.
I think it was Diamante and Kai. It might have been Diamante and Hyo. Might have been Kai and Hyo. I don't know. All that matters is the foundation for this match was built on that undercard Dead or Alive tag match. And for as much as I'd like to critique Ultimo and knock him for being in anything important, I have no notes for the way this feud was built. I mean, this is something that come end of the year Observer time, Diamante versus Ultimo Dragon should absolutely be mentioned in Feud of the Year because it was a proper feud, obviously long-term going back years and years and years, but even from May of this year through July of this year, you had your start, you had your middle with the Dragon Kid stuff and the Shun Skywalker stuff and the Strong Machine J stuff all being added into this match. And then you have the payoff with Diamante at the end. It's the best use of Ultimo Dragon imaginable. It's the best use of Ultimo Dragon since 1998 when he was on Nitro. I mean, this will go down for me as one of the most memorable things he's done in his career when he eventually retires.
Oh, easily. And this will be his top Dragongate moment after his return.
Completely, 100%. Dragon Kid. I want to talk about him next. I make this point a lot. This is not a new conversation starter for the people that have heard this podcast before, but it's something that I still feel the need to bring up. And that is that time works in a funny way. And because of the way that time works now, I would argue the meaning of time has changed over the last decade. You know, we all have fond memories and strong memories at that of 2007, whereas we don't have those strong memories in 2017, and we'll have even less in 2027 because we're constantly getting hit over the head with new. We're consuming more than ever. We're forgetting more than ever. And so time has changed meaning. And because of that, I think people neglect to realize how old Dragongate is. Like I said, it's going to be 25 years old next year. And that means that Susumu and that Dragon Kid and that Mochizuki and that Fuji and that Ryo Saito, those day one guys, have now been wrestling consistently for 25 years. And if you're a fan of this promotion, 25 years of wrestling often goes hand in hand with 25 years of greatness. And I just started thinking about Dragon Kid historically. He's incredible. And I think we all, everyone listening to this podcast, you and me included, underrate this guy as an in-ring competitor, as an asset to the company, and what he means to the company. This, as a four-way match, would have been great. But Dragon Kid, to me, undoubtedly took this match to another level, and it's something he's been doing now for almost 25 years.
Yeah, and it's something that for him, he is someone that I just fully expect will be like this until he decides he's done. Like, after the rough 1999, he has been tremendous, like, ever since then. And in this match, I mean, yes, he was added in, and I thought that Jay did a tremendous job of working why Dragon Kid entered himself into this mess talking about the video from Mexico and the timing of it. But he was just like, it was something that, like, when the match was at that phase, before it needed to get down to the people that we all knew it was in question, he was the glue. And I think that that's something that people tend to forget, as you say, like 25 years. And then there's more wrestling now than ever. But there's still only 24 hours in a day. And
there's more stuff now than ever. It's just, it's sorry to cut you off there. It's just, I think about this a lot. There's just everything. There's always everything to do. It's maddening.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that, like, you almost like think of, like, oh, it would have been nice to live in an age where it's like, oh, what happened after you work? You went to sleep. Like, there's a part of me that finds that very alluring instead of like constant, just everything all at once. But yeah, it's something that Dragon Kid, he's the glue here, as he is the glue pretty much in this promotion ever since 2000. And I think that he is not going to be someone that I think the average wrestling viewer is going to appreciate the mark he had on the industry. And I think it's going to be something that it will only be in retrospect when you hear so many wrestlers say, like, oh yeah, no, I got into wrestling because Dragon Gate came to my town and Dragon Kid was there. And I think that only then will people realize, like, how much of the glue he was.
Well, it's funny because he is going to have a few different legacies, because not everyone is going to, when they think Dragon Kid, they're going to think Ultra Hurricane Rana and the Suwa match and all of the crazy spots that he did when he still had legs. So he'll retire and you'll read a comment about, oh, innovative high flyer, crazy spots. And then you and I are going to go, glue guy, always dependable, really grounded Dragon Gate in a metaphorical sense. It's just, he's been around that long that he has those different chapters of his career. And I started thinking about him in the present day. And, you know, I've been such an advocate of, I love what they're doing with YAMATO this year. He's not in a unit. He's just kind of fucking around, quite honestly. And I like that because YAMATO has been a heavy, everlasting presence in the main event scene for 14 years now. This is the year that we can get a break from YAMATO, and it's nice. He hasn't done anything wrong. It's just, you know, we went into Kobe World and YAMATO wasn't in a title match. I don't know the last time that happened. I mean, think about that for a second. When was the last time there was a Kobe World without YAMATO in a title match? It would have to be 2007. I would certainly think so. You know, this year is obviously in a big singles match, but it wasn't a title match. The point is, YAMATO not being in a unit, I think, has been a service to the company this year. Dragon Kid not being in a unit since high end has been a disservice to the company. This is a guy who was just far too valuable to have him doing unaffiliated tags, random singles matches, for all intents and purposes outside of this match, really sitting on the sidelines this year. That is not the way that Dragon Kid should be used going forward. This is a guy that, when I plot out July, August, September, number, high up on the billboard needs to be get Dragon Kid into a unit. I don't care what it is. If it's Vibes, if it's D-Courage, if it's a new unit, get this guy doing something, because he's far too valuable to be doing what he's been doing for most of this year.
So yeah, no, I think that with his role in this, like, there's really, like, that's another one across all marks. Let's talk about the X factor going into the match. The person that I was really thinking was going to be able to take the ball and run with it. Strong Machine J, how are you? Let's take a look at Strong Machine J. We do have reports, and it's been official that he is out of King of Gate. Case, I believe you have more information about Strong Machine J going forward.
Is he, well, hold on. Is he for sure out of King of Gate? Because the last report was that he's out for Korakuen this week and is a maybe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, because he had a late match in the tournament.
Yes. So, as of this recording, which is July 5th, 6:55 Central Time, as I look up into the sky, and I think God is about to unleash fury on Chicago. So if I lose connection, just know there's a horrific storm rolling through. But as of recording time, Strong Machine J will not be at the Korakuen Hall show on July 7th. I believe he was booked for the Mochizuki Produce show on July 8th. I don't think that's going to happen either. But his first round King of Gate match is July 14th in Nagoya. And right now, that match is a maybe. What I was told from somebody was Strong Machine J's hurt and is a maybe for King of Gate. There were a lot of questions about him seemingly deactivating his Twitter yesterday, and this person brought up to me, it's not the first time he's done that. Strong Machine J has deactivated, reactivated that. I wouldn't read into that. There's at least no news from the person I spoke to of like, this means this or this means that. I think it's just Strong Machine J kind of being a weird guy, and that's where we're going to go from there. But he is hurt, and at this point is labeled as basically a game time decision for King of Gate.
Yeah, and if I'm right, that was the shoulder that he's had surgery on.
It would not surprise me.
I believe that's a trick one. But let's talk about him in the match. I felt like that he had, with the first part of the match being so DK and Ultimo dependent, he kind of drifted away, and at the same time was like concerned with Shun during that time. But when it came down to 3 and it became 2-on-1, I felt like that he really kind of showed some of the charisma that we've been seeing over the last year. And I thought that the way that he escaped elimination and that he was able to take out both members of Shun Monte and then get the escape, I thought he had a strong performance. I would have liked him not to disappear the way that he did, but that's just the tendency of having a cage like that.
Yeah, I will sacrifice a slow start to the match for the electric finish that he had, because once this came down to the 3 guys and it was Z-Brats versus Strong Machine J, they first do the spot where it looks like Z-Brats are going to escape. Shun Skywalker's at the top of the cage. Strong Machine J starts pulling him down and pulling him down in a real violent, seemingly uncooperative looking way. I mean, it felt like a fight. Again, it was, the closest to War Games I think Dragongate has ever had. Shun's at the top of the cage with Strong Machine J contesting. Diamante's all alone. Diamante hops down, saves Shun, and you go into this 2-on-1 attack again. And then the tides turn and Strong Machine J makes this babyface comeback. And I said this in my written review at voicesofwrestling.com. The Strong Machine J comeback made me believe in all things good in the world. It was phenomenal. It was every bit of potential that he's ever had unlocked. And he didn't come across as robotic as he obviously did his first 2 years in the company. He came across as this human that you wanted to root for and live for and die for. And I was ready to crawl on my hands and knees to Kobe to protect this guy from the beating that he was getting, mask ripped and all. And then he did the comeback himself. He escapes the cage after the sunset flip powerbomb through the table on Shun Skywalker. To me, the big takeaway from this is Strong Machine J entered this match, and I think you would agree with this, as someone firmly in the upper mid card. Certainly not on the level of a Shun, of a Yoshioka, of a Kikuta, but also somebody ahead of a Jason Lee and a Jackie Funky Kamei, and let's say an Ishin. This was a guy in the upper mid card. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I would say that he was clear tier below, but he was definitely an upper mid carder.
Coming out of this match, we now have Strong Machine J pounding and banging on the glass ceiling above his head like he's in the Titanic submarine that was lost at sea trying to escape. This is a guy that is an inch away from the main event scene, an inch away from being like a real player in this company that we have to pay attention to. Everybody in this match came in one spot and I think exited in a better spot than they came in. Obviously, Diamante is the big winner here, but Strong Machine J did everything right to me. And this is a guy who I hope is in King of Gate. I hope he can ride that wave of momentum through August, Dangerous Gate, and then into the rest of the year, because they have something here. And he's proven himself. Mike, think about the first show of the year. I looked at this earlier today. I thought this was so interesting. First show of the year, it's Osaka #2. We find out right before the show that, it's going to be a cheering show. Okay, this is exciting. First cheering show outside of Tokyo since March of 2020 when they ran this building. The main event of that show was a mixed tag. It was Diamante and Madoka Kikuta versus Coach Minoura and Yuki Yoshioka. Think about where those guys ended up. Diamante, the big winner in this main event. Kikuta, Dreamgate champion. Yoshioka challenging for the Dreamgate championship. Coach Minoura wins the Triangle Gate championship and was awesome, in that match. I really liked what Gold Class did, and Minoura specifically. On that show, Strong Machine J, 6-man tag match. Jason Lee, Strong Machine J, and Ultimo Dragon versus Genki Horiguchi, Ho-Ho Lun, and Punch Tabanaga. I find that to be relevant because Dragongate put their cards on the table in that main event. They said, these 4 guys are going to matter this year. Here's their story. Pay attention to them. Strong Machine J was hiding in the abyss, and it wasn't until he pinned Shun Skywalker and Rey de Parejas, succeeded in the Champion Gate in Osaka match. He didn't win, obviously, but it was like, oh, okay, he can hang. Strong Machine J can be a guy, and then it's built on that ever since, and now he's here. And we see the payoff of all of that. Just a tremendous outing from Strong Machine J.
And they still have him and Shun in their back pocket.
Oh my God. There's so much more they can do with that. That is, we'll talk about Shun in just a second. They have more to do with these guys. That doesn't feel over at all. I mean, that feels like we have tag matches and singles matches and maybe a unit disbands match, which who would have thought, even a year ago when they were doing a lot of Shun and KZ stuff, Z-Brats versus Natural Vibes, a unit disbands match, it could come down to Strong Machine J defending Natural Vibes. And I don't think that's a position that you or I ever expected him to be in. But right now, he feels like the beating heart of Natural Vibes.
Yeah, and it's something that if that match were to happen, I feel like the turn has to be from the person leaving Vibes. The betrayer has to be on Strong Machine J, not on KZ anymore. Like, it just seems like that is the thing that, yes, KZ is the leader. Yes, it's the unit still is a KZ unit, but we have reached the point in its lifespan where it's doing less for KZ and it's doing more for a lot of the other members.
I completely agree. So for me, again, Diamante is going to get all the press, and he should. This is Diamante's night. This is Diamante's story. But we can't just blow past Strong Machine J and the work that he did here because he was in a very safe position. Even if he just existed in this match, he would have been okay going forward. But he, just like he's done all year, took another step up, and he slowly crawled up this ladder of success. And now he is just a small glancing blow away from that main event scene. And if there was anybody questioning in May, hey, does this guy belong in the Reiwa 6? I think the answer is clear now that he does.
Yeah, no. Originally, when I was writing that piece, it was going to be about Strong Machine J last week, and it kind of evolved out of it. But he has now firmly put it behind him about being the 6th in the Reiwa 6. Okay, so let's talk about the person that on commentary was called a fucking snake.
Can we talk about the Reiwa Musketeers real quick? I'm sorry. Can we take 30 seconds?
Please. You mean I get to make fun of Shota Amino for a minute? I feel 10 minutes of shooter material, man. Come on, let's do it.
These fucking losers in my mentions. And it's all because Rover retweeted me, and I love Rover. That's not a shot at him. But these fucking losers in my mentions, when I said that New Japan was copying a Dragongate main event, and they go, oh, how was Dragongate come up with the Musketeers? No, you fucking idiot. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that Dragongate had a very public, very noteworthy angle where they said, we are the Reiwa generation, here we come. And then a few months later, New Japan was like, well, we've already admitted that the way we were training guys was wrong and that we should do what the Dragon System's doing. What if we also just completely ape the verbiage they use for their main eventers with our new generation? I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, and it's something also that, when you look at this, it's oh, this is what you have. And, God, each time I see Shota Amino, the more and more angry I get about this. Say what you will about the Reiwa 6. I think we could say definitively all 6 have an ounce of the dog in them, whereas there's more dog in a cat cafe than there is in Shota Amino.
God, that was like a vintage Jim Cornette phrase. That was really good.
I was more going for hating ass Spurrier, but I'll take that.
That was like RF video Cornette era. Just oh damn, more dog in a cat cafe. That's good. That feels southern. I like that.
Hey, I'll take that. Shun Skywalker. I don't know if he could have gone to another height, but I feel coming out of this, what a performance from the guy. If we wanted, yes, this is Diamante's match, but it was all facilitated by Shun Skywalker.
I'm almost out of words to say about this guy. I think we are really witnessing something great with Shun, and it is not this character or this year. It is a career of greatness. And I briefly want to just go through the timeline of Skywalker's career, just in case, maybe, if this is somebody's first cage match, first Dragongate show, first time watching Shun Skywalker, whatever. This is a guy who debuted in 2016. Shun Watanabe didn't have a mask, didn't have anything. November of 2016, takes on the Shun Skywalker character, and certainly creates a lot of buzz, because in the ever-polished and pretty Dragongate world, Shun Skywalker did not look like that. He looked like an abomination in not only his first ring outfit, but many of the ones that followed. He looked like a guy that was out of Michinoku Pro in 1994, and that was both a good thing and a bad thing.
Just provide some clarity on this for new people. So his color was green, but they did not get his first gear all in one color of green. Like, his gloves were one color, his mask was another, his bodysuit was another. It was a hot mess, and it stayed that way basically until Mochizuki Dojo came about.
Yeah, so that happens at the end of 2016. If you watch Shun in 2017 and really for the first half of 2018, I picked up on this in the moment, and I was so fascinated by it when it happened. Basically, Shun on these pay-per-views would be in the opening match of every one. It would be an 8-man tag with the young guys versus whoever. They would all do their spots. They would do a dive train. They would all clear the ring. And then Shun Skywalker, time after time after time again, was able to hit a beautiful top rope moonsault to the floor. That was his thing. That was the thing he did well. There were a lot of holes in Shun's game, but this was a guy that could very easily do his thing and do it well. And that thing was the moonsault. So for the first year and a half of his career proper, he's just the springboard moonsault guy. He slowly starts to develop a bit more of an in-ring presence. We see the bicycle kick come into play. We see, this guy's kind of charismatic, interesting. He does, the first real big break for him is he and Mochizuki do the All Japan Junior Tag League in 2018. And notably, they have the match. It's those two against Shuji Kondo. And I think he was still teaming with Kaz Hayashi at that point. Blow-away match. It's Mochizuki versus Kondo for the first time in 14 years. It's Skywalker versus Kondo for the first time ever. They go out there. They absolutely destroy. They come back. There's a Twin Gate match. It's BB Hulk and YAMATO versus Shun and Mochizuki. It's one of the best Twin Gate matches of all time. And all of a sudden, it's like, Shun Skywalker's not just a flippy guy. Like, there's something here. And our thought was maybe they have their next Brave Gate champion. So we go into 2019. You and I have done a retrospective on this since. We obviously talked about it a lot in the moment. The rookie ranking tournament and in the beginning of 2019, Dragongate had 7 rookies, put them in a tournament. Shun Skywalker wins. He beats Kaito Ishida in the finals in January. He beats Ben K in February when no one was beating Ben K. And then he goes on and he wrestles Pac for the Dreamgate belt in 2019. That match, by the way, the biggest crowd in Osaka #2 in Dragongate post-OWE split to this day. All of a sudden, it's like, holy shit, Shun's like a guy. He's kind of in the same position that Strong Machine J is in right now. He goes out there, has a great May, leaves Mochizuki Dojo, has the killer match with KZ at Kobe World that year, which I think really brought a lot of eyeballs on him. 2019, the end of that year, he's aligned with Ben K, who was the Dreamgate champion. Probably the least satisfying era of his career, because they had a lot of big matches that weren't necessarily great. They were just kind of good. And then 2020, he goes off to Mexico, comes back and wins the Dreamgate belt, and from there you have the 2 definitive eras. You have Masquerade Shun Skywalker, who kicked ass as a babyface, had all these great multi-man tags, really put the company on his back in 2021. And then you have Zebrat Shun Skywalker, and for the last year and a half, he's been the most compelling character in wrestling. I think a lot of people would point to an MJF for that award, but Shun hasn't had a dud like Double or Nothing 2023. He's been consistently great this entire time, and it's just becoming a reoccurring theme in his career. Wherever Shun Skywalker goes, greatness follows.
Yeah, and it's something that with him, the big thing was in 2019 was like, he does not really have a character. And he came back from Excursion as this very stoic baby face, just like wanting to form Dragongate around his image. And he, from there, like was known for like being a bad charisma guy until December 2011 or 2021. And ever since then, I mean, I think like comparing it to MJF is almost not fair to MJF. I think that it is something that where Shun Skywalker has evolved over his heel turn since 2022. MJF has been a very static character, and to me that was something that is very, very clear about MJF, is that there's like the same things, whereas Shun Skywalker innovates, and I feel like took it to the next level in this cage match, basically doing like it was like not only a stab in the back in 2021 when he shoved Dragon Dia in front of Diamante Luz's mask. That was a stab in the back. This time, this was not just like a stab in the front. It was like we are just going to completely destroy you. And
he stabbed him in the eye socket, basically.
Yeah, he did. And that's not also to mention like what happened to Diamante, like injuring Diamante and all of that. It's just, I think he is one of the most dynamic characters in all of pro wrestling. And I'm really excited to see where he goes after this. And especially with the fact that he's going to be doing another US tour in September. Like, it'll be interesting to see like how they get to that and what he does coming back from it.
So I bring up the timeline of Skywalker's career just to kind of put into perspective, like, hey, yes, he's young, but he's not new. This is a guy who's now 7 years pro. 7 years is a very long time. Obviously 2016 feels like forever ago. And I started thinking about Shun historically and where he fits in the lineage of the Dragon system. And I came up with 3 tiers of wrestlers, and I want to know where you would put Shun, in which group you would put him in, or if you would put him below the 3rd tier. So are you ready for these groups? And I'll read all of them to you, and then you can kind of tell me where you think he lands, okay?
Okay.
Tier 1, this is Dragon System historical greatness. Shima, Shingo, Yamato, Masato Yoshino, Masaki Mochizuki. Tier 2, Susumu Mochizuki, Milano Collection AT, Dragon Kid, Naruki Doi, and Eita. Tier 3, Genki Horiguchi, Akira Tozawa, Ben K, BB Hulk, KZ. If you're slotting Shun Skywalker historically, which of those tiers, which of those 5-headed dragons, I want to say it's Mount Rushmore, but there's 5 guys, not 4, where are you placing him at this exact moment, coming off of this cage match and that performance?
Well, first off, I have to aggressively refute Akira Tozawa being in the 3rd tier. How dare you? But with
separate conversation. We'll circle back to that next week.
Yeah. Just get my pitchfork ready, man. Come on. I think with the way you looked at it, he's already in that 2nd tier, and the only thing that stops people from putting him into that tier is that we're talking about 7 years, not 25.
Give him a year. I think he might end up by that point having a definitively better, more prosperous, more successful Dragongate career than Eita. And Eita's done it all. Look, not a wrestler I love. I've spent a lot of time talking about that, but Eita's undeniably, a core of Dragongate. You can't tell the story of this promotion without talking about Eita in his various incarnations. We've hit that point with Shun Skywalker where there's now multiple phases of Shun's career that really matter historically, none more than what he's done as a heel, which has just been next level brilliant stuff.
And let's put it this way when we talk just one-to-one about Eita. Eita achieved that, but he should have been 1st tier. Like that.
Yes, he's a lottery pick that was an all-star but not a Hall of Famer, and that will forever be a black mark on his legacy.
Yeah, like that's the thing is, like, if you really want to like boil it down, so with Eita, you're talking about 12 years, really, 12 years. And how many of those years can we say are complete washes?
Oh, God. Well, okay, so 12 years ago was 2011, so he's irrelevant in 11 and 12. He's good 13, 14, 15, irrelevant, or at least not enjoyable 16, 17. I don't like his 2018 at all because I wasn't into the Dragon Kid feud. So we're like four of those years historically. I'm just not into what Eita was doing whatsoever.
That's a 1/3 of his Dragongate career.
And that's not including the last year, which has been a confusing mess.
Right. Whereas you compare and contrast that with Skywalker, he had maybe the Shun Watanabe phase into the bad mask phase, but by the time Mochizuki Dojo was rolling in 2017, he was already off to the races.
Well, and even that stuff, you're talking about a young boy and then a guy who was talented but just had a bad look. And, you can't I'm not going to hold that against him. The blemish on his career is that late 2019 stuff with him and Ben K, because they got a lot of big matches and none of them really hit the way that you thought they would. Like there was Shun and Ben versus Speed Muscle. That is a match that you and I should remember spots from it. We should remember that show. We should remember the star rating. And it just wasn't that. That's really the blemish on his career is, hey, this guy had about 4 or 5 matches that should have been great that were merely good. That's where we're at 7 years into his career.
Yeah, so do I think he'll break into that first tier? I don't know. I think that those 5 people you had in that first tier, those are very singular kind of wrestlers, and Shun is his own person. Maybe he can carve his way up there, but I don't see a reason why he won't be the high second tier at this if things all break the way they are and trending the way they are. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, there's a reason I brought it up, because I at least, and I if he breaks into that tier 1, that's not for another 5 years. That's not for another 10 years. We really have to be talking about somebody special at that point, but it at least has to be on people's radars. I mean, would you agree that at this point he's had a better career than Ben K? And that's not a knock on Ben, but to me, that's how it's played out.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just how the cards were dealt. That, like, it's not Shun's fault that Ben K was someone who had, like, concussion issues that popped up at times and then had a really deflating Dreamgate run that put him kind of in the wilderness. And it was only really until he got bored watching YouTube videos that he discovered himself. Like, it's just reality.
You think about, high-end Ben K and just the albatross that was on these shows, and he figured it out. He got into gold class. It's all worked out, but Shun's never had a period of his career that was like that. It's just...
The most you could say is Masquerade Mike segments.
Yeah, and I'm that might keep him out of tier 1, but that's not going to keep him out of tier 2, quite frankly.
And who's to say if he ever turns face again, or when he turns face again, he's able to pull from this and add that to it, that we now he's able to have babyface promos. Who's to say?
It's a funny that you say when he turns face, because it's so not even on my radar. It just feels like there's so much more juice to squeeze. And I'm not saying you were advocating for him to turn face, but you still have the issue with Strong Machine J. You sort of have this permanent issue with KZ. You have whatever comes out of Z-Brats going their own way, which I think is happening sooner rather than later. It seems like you might have unfinished business with D-Courage, let alone the fact that you have M3K there, where you haven't had a singles match against Mochizuki since 2019, a match I gave 4 3/4 stars to. Haven't really had any interactions with Mochizuki Jr. It's not like there's a classic Shun versus Susumu match out there. Like, just existing in the space that he's in now, it feels like the rest of the roster is at play. Like, this guy's untapped potential still. And we've been in this character for a year and a half now, but everything Shun touches turns out better because he's involved. And we're now at a point where it seems like the guys that Shun works with come out better because they've been with Shun in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, that face turn, when I said it, I'm not thinking anytime soon, because you have all of that. But it's something that, I mean, flashback to 2014 or 2013. Were we thinking that YAMATO would have that big face turn that next year? No, not necessarily in 2014. No, that's 2016 and 2015. Like, yeah,
it's a very interesting position to be in, because I just listed out all the things he can still do as a heel, and then when he turns face, it's going to be a whole other ballgame.
And then let's talk about the biggest winner of Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival 2023. We knew this would probably be the case. Like, did you really think that Shun or SMJ were going to lose their masks?
Well, I said from the beginning, I think this is the vehicle for Diamante to lose, but I couldn't entirely rule out the idea that Strong Machine J would be the guy to be unmasked. Now, I thought it was going to be Diamante. It didn't surprise me that it was Diamante, but, there were possibilities there. But once we got into the cage, it was like, all right, let's do this Diamante thing here. This is the time to do it, and it absolutely, it felt right by the end of it.
It just was something for me that, like, of course, I couldn't discount the big swerve, especially after a post 2021 mask match kind of world. But for how much I expected this to happen, I did not expect the face turn to go as well as it did. So, as you all know, Diamante lost the cage match. He unmasked, and they kept the lucha tradition. That was something that they did and didn't do. It was one of those things that wasn't really picked up on. Of course, lucha tradition, you reveal your real name, you reveal how long you've been in a pro. Case, starting at 13. That's wild. Like, I'm used to hearing, like, oh, they started in their teens, but 13, that is one I did not expect for Diamante.
No, he's got an insane career, and I wrote this in my review, when he debuted in Dragon, it was August of 2019, and I wrote, Diamante just appeared, and I basically was like, I don't know who this guy is. He's a luchador. He seems muscular, which is good for RED, and we'll see what comes of him, because despite the fact that he had been wrestling at that point for 15 years, it was, CMLL at a time where I didn't pay attention to the promotion, and All Japan Pro Wrestling in 2018, and that was only a few matches. He was a guy that was completely off my radar, even though he had been wrestling, by that point for years and years.
Yeah, and it's something that, like, his career beforehand, he was affiliated with CMLL a lot in his youth, but as CMLL kind of is, he did not really either. It seems like I was not watching CMLL at that age, but from everything I've read, it just seems like it just was someone who fell out of favor, was doing indie spots, and then did Lucha Libre Elite. Case. Is that a blast from your past right now?
It is, because Elite was a big entry point to Lucha for me, because I actually really enjoyed parts of that promotion, and I think if it came around now, I would be super, super into it.
Yeah, so he had a role in Elite, but it was not necessarily like a starring role. And then from there, he kind of was just an indie wrestler until him and Ultimo got together. And that's what got him into Dragongate. I've actually been trying to see, like, looking through like messages I have with people to see the first time, like, I asked about, like, what's the deal with this Diamante guy? And I did, and there was a little bit about that in 2019. So yeah, it's something that, like, who could think that now, foreigner Mount Rushmore, we've got Pac, we've got Ricochet, we have Flamita, I would still say. With this performance, do we now have place there for the former Diamante?
Oh, I mean, I would have put him in there in the top 4 before this match. I mean, now the conversation really becomes, where does this unmasking rank in terms of Pac winning the Dreamgate and Ricochet being Dreamgate and Freedom Gate champion at the same time? He, all due respect to Flamita, who I love, and, I really loved his time in Dragon Gate, he has blown by anything that Flamita has ever done. This is now a conversation. When you talk about foreigners in Dragon Gate, it's Pac, it's Ricochet, and it's Diamante, and those are the guys that have to be mentioned. And it's Jason Lee, if you want. It's always weird because Jason Lee's Asian, but he's not Japanese, and so I think people forget that he's also a foreigner. I never know how to brace that subject, but for the sake of conversation, it's Diamante, Pac, and Ricochet. As of right now, I think you still have Pac, Ricochet, Diamante in that order, but in due time, Diamante could very easily be a Dreamgate champion, and then we'll have to revisit this conversation.
Then we will have to have that conversation. I completely co-sign with you about that. Like, yeah, get the Dreamgate. Then we're talking about where he is really amongst the top foreigners. During the match, he was brought down from the cage and it was really hard off. He has been completely pulled for King of Gate. He had a match in Cork and that has been canceled. It was against Susumu Mochizuki, who will be getting a first round bye with that case. I know you have a little bit more about this. One thing I wanted to touch on, I did have several people reach out about, like, this is it for Diamante's run in Dragon Gate. No, that there's no indication of that, and the company is treating this that he will be with the company. It might be a bit, but he will be with the company going forward.
No, that's the big thing. So what I heard about Diamante was the person I talked to, they said, they don't know if he's hurt or if he just needs to reset himself. And I think that's relevant, one, from a storyline perspective, because you have to remember when Dragon Dia lost his mask, he disappeared for a month and then returned to the January Cork in January 2022. And it was like, oh, well, okay, there's Dragon Dia. Sure, why not? So there's storyline precedent that says, okay, he can go away for a month, for 2 months, and then come back. You got to remember, Diamante debuted August 2019, stayed during COVID, which is why he's in the position he's in. And this is certainly not a shot at Jimmy, the other luchador who was there at the time, but, look at their careers. Diamante stayed in Japan. Jimmy did not. We were told, hey, Jimmy went home. Probably not coming back because he went home. Diamante stayed. He became family. Look at what just happened to him. Okay, it all worked out for him in the end. But other than being injured this year, he really hasn't had a break. So it makes sense if he's not hurt to give him a bit of a reset before he comes back with no mask. If he is hurt, obviously, he's going to get some time off. The thing that was strongly emphasized to me from the person that I talked to in the company was that we might not see him for a while, but he's not leaving. He's not going anywhere. He is a Dragongate wrestler. So put those thoughts at ease. Unless something truly shocking happens, which will blindside people inside the company, Diamante is going to be a Dragongate wrestler going forward.
Yeah, to my knowledge, he still has not been back to Mexico since COVID.
He went back for...
Oh, he did?
He went back for Christmas. I don't think he worked in Mexico, but he went back for Christmas, I think, last year. Because I remember there was a really touching social media post of him on the airplane talking about what it meant to come home to Mexico. Yeah. It was a nice... The Dragongate Dojo during COVID was a very scary time, and the fact that he stayed, he's been rewarded ever since.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be... I forgot about that last Christmas. I wouldn't be surprised if he's going home for a little bit, taking off, because since he's now out of King of Gate, there's no reason for him really to be on shows until you're ready to relaunch him. He might be going home, visiting family. Good for him. Yeah,
and to reemphasize, there's the storyline precedent here. I mean, the only other one I can think of is, Darkness Dragon Kid. Darkness Dragon lost his mask, but then also wrestled for another month and a half as Darkness Dragon before he re-debuted as Kness. So they're always a little weird with what they do post unmaskings. So it's unfortunate we lose the Susumu match. I certainly hope they revisit that at some point, but this is not eyeball emoji. This is not alarm emoji. This is not ask questions. We're gonna get the Diamante story. Don't worry about that.
It's the end of the chapter, not the book of Diamante and Dragongate. And gosh, I don't think there can really be enough words describing how successful this was. I think part of it was Ultimo coming out and them having that embrace, and Ultimo lead the crowd a little bit. I mean, he was cutting a promo in Spanish, so probably was helpful to have someone out there for that. But I don't think you can come away from Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival 2023 and not think that the person that came out of the show looking the best was Diamante.
It all worked out the way they drew it up. I specifically enjoyed the Tokyo Sports recap of this match where they talked about, Diamante unmasked and something along the lines of received massive calls from the female fans in attendance. We told you guys, he's going to unmask. He's going to be hot. I didn't realize he just looked like Mexican Yamato, which is a whole thing that I can't wait to see what they do with. But he unmasked. He's a good-looking guy. Ultimo gave him the seal of approval. I would really hope that he's back at that August Korakuen. Now, it's weird because he's going to miss King of Gate. The King of Gate finals is that August Korakuen. It just seems like that is the show to do Shun and Kai, or Shun and Hyo, or Shun and Ishin, whoever, versus Ultimo and Diamante at that Nagoya show, which is Ultimo's hometown. It's a shame that I don't think they're going to go in that direction, because I don't know if he'll be back or not, but we clearly have some sort of Ultimo Diamante tag team that needs a big match or two, and that seems like the perfect place to do it. Now it's just a matter of scheduling.
Shun has never won King of Gate. I mean, who's to say...
Boy, did that just unlock something in my brain.
I hope it's unlocking what I intended it to. Who's to say that Shun's not finding himself in the finals of King of Gate in that August Korakuen? And who's to say that Diamante might not just show right back up, and we're going into that. So, just put it out there.
That That leaves me with some things to think about as we progress in this podcast.
Oh yeah, but I just like everything about this. It's going to be so cool. Like the thing of like when we talk about Ultimo, I feel satisfied. When I think about Dragon Kid, I feel like remembering like how great he is. When I talk about Strong Machine J in this match, we're talking about someone who took the challenge and came out looking a lot better. When we talk about Shun Skywalker, we talk about a masterpiece and watching someone at the heights of his talent really do incredible things in a professional wrestling ring and in the context of professional wrestling. And then you have Diamante, and coming out of this, it's excitement. I can't wait to see what's next for him.
They couldn't have stuck the landing any better than they did. It's a testament to Dragongate, a match that will be in my top 10 this year. You know, I went 4 3/4 stars on this. It's one of the most memorable cage matches in history, and the ending with Diamante taking his mask off, one of the most memorable moments in Dragongate history.
Yeah, I was 4.5 on it. Cage matches are just so tough to, especially like the steel cage survival match. Is so tough to always like put a rating on it. Like whereas Shingo and Komao Ichikawa, easy 5 stars. I knew that immediately. 5 stars, no notes. However, this one, like, how do you grade like something on this that like goes in so many different directions? Like I don't know. Like it is something that. Yeah, it's a 4.5 star match. It will probably be in my top 10 list, but I'm going to come away with this like thinking more about this match and this cage match 5 years from now than I probably will most things I've watched in 2023.
Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and I want to connect you all with an opportunity to get started or get ahead. Having multiple sportsbook accounts is the most simple way to maximize your profits, and there has never been a better time to sign up. When you visit our page, which is betstamp.app/VOW, you'll be connected to all the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful sports betting. If you want to take advantage of these benefits and support the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at betstamp.app/VOW.
So that was our first of what they call double main events case. That was, of course, the one that went on last. However, the other main event was the Open the Dreamgate title match. D-Courage exploding. Madoka Kikuta was successful in his first defense of the Open the Dreamgate with 2 rolling lariats over Yuki Yoshioka. And I guess this is a yes or no question case. Did they do enough in the ring to make up for the build?
No,
I'm with you there.
This is a weird match in that it was good, but it's the worst thing both of these guys have done in the last year. You know, Yoshioka, his Dreamgate run, he beat Kai, which was great. The Minoura match you liked a little bit more than I did, but once you get past the mess that was last year's Kobe World, it's like, okay, well, it's Yamato and it's Mochizuki and it's Eita and who did he beat at Final Gate? Was it Ben?
Yeah, it was Ben.
Yeah, and the Ben match, and then the Shun match, which, a top 10 match for me this year as well. Into Rey de Purejas, where he and Kikuta are great. And then from there, you transition into Kikuta versus Skywalker. These guys are operating at like a baseline of 4.5 stars in their big matches. And then they were saddled here with a really weird build. Like I talked about, it seems to be a thing with Ryo Saito's booking where he gets a little too cute with these Dreamgate matches, and it seems to come back and bite him a little bit. And this was good, but just by the sheer comparison of everything else they've done since August of last year, this is the worst thing they've done.
Yeah, and it's something where I don't know with the story that was presented that this might have been like, yeah, this is what we got. This might have been with how things were presented about as good as it could have gone, Like, I mean, I was I think I'm a little higher on it than you. What would you have on it first off?
I gave it 3 3/4.
Okay, I was a half star higher. I was 4 1/4 on it. And
that's okay. Interesting.
And I think a lot of that might be because I think in general am higher on Yuki Yoshioka than everyone else, and I really enjoyed the legwork and the selling of the legwork throughout it. But it just was something where at the end of it, it was not to the level. And we knew that it was going to have an issue that it needed to hit to that level. And I can't walk away saying that I was satisfied with this, even though 4 1/4 stars, I absolutely hated it, you know?
It's, yeah. You know, I'll make this point out of it. The match was a disappointment because I think for their own sake, it needed to be something truly great that could rival the hour-long conversation that we just had about the cage match, and it wasn't that. At the same time, can we all pump the brakes, take a deep breath, and relax on Madoka Kikuta discourse for just a second? I saw far too many comments this weekend. Oh, I don't know if he can hack at his Dreamgate champion. Are we sure he's a top guy? You know, do they need to get the belt off of him? Everybody relax. From August of 22 through May 28th of 23, this guy was the hottest wrestler in the company who continuously elevated things just from simply existing in the presence of the moment. He was saddled with the match that he should have gotten and the angle that did not go with it. I don't think anybody would have succeeded with the friendly angle and air quotes, if you will, situation that these guys were saddled with. But let's not throw away 11 months of history and undoubted success and scratch our chins and question whether or not he can hang at the highest level when he's proven that he can't. I saw far too much of that this weekend. And to add on that before I let you go, this was one of those matches where I read a bunch of comments. Oh, crowd's dead. Oh, crowd's not into this. So I was expecting, a library when I watched this match. And then I finally watched. I was like, wait a minute, what are they talking about? Like, the crowd was super into this. You know, there were spots that didn't work. Specifically, there's that Kikuta snap pile driver spot about 3/4 of the way through the match. It didn't really fit in with the match structure. It kind of threw off the pacing, and the crowd didn't pop for it because it was also awkward. But if you remove, let's say, 25 seconds, I'm not sure what else they were supposed to do. This was very clearly a match that, again, you're going to throw most of the drawing power on this show to YAMATO Hiromu in the cage match. And if you want to give a sliver to Shingo and a sliver to the Dreamgate match, I won't fight you. But let's not act like this was, a clap crowd that these guys were wrestling in front of. This was very clearly a crowd invested in the outcome of this match.
And the thing that I wonder about that is we have talked to people that were in the building, and almost universally case, what did they say about the crowd throughout the night?
Great crowd.
That tells me that maybe, and I know that this is the case sometimes, that tells me maybe the mix was off, Like if people there saying no, the crowd was great.
I don't even want to entertain that conversation. The crowd was hot. People are wrong about that. I'm sorry. And this could go into, well, they weren't as over as YAMATO and they weren't as over as Hiromu. Okay, I'll secede that point. That's not the victory lap that you think it is. This is very clearly a match that people cared about.
Yeah, there are people that went to the show just to see the Hiromu match. It's not it was enough to like make it noticeable, but it was not a thing that the crowd sat on their hands throughout the rest of their show. People, come on. But
here's a note from somebody that was in the building, which maybe irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but I'll read it here anyways. Fan in the building: Yoshioka and Kikuta deciding they were going to work a slow-paced classic caught me off guard a bit, but they pulled it off. So double good on them. So, I mean, look, I wrote that in my review. They worked this match like it was the main event of the fucking Tokyo Dome. I mean, it was big and slow, arguably to a fault. But the last half of the match, when they're hitting each other as hard as they can with these lariat counters, I question what you're watching if you're not into that at least slightly. I mean, that's a you problem at that point, not a them problem.
Yeah, and again, I might go and just click through the show on the Japanese feed just to see, because I'm wondering about that. I know you don't want to give the ammo for that. I think that could very much be the issue, but I think what we're kind of getting to about this was they had the match that they were going to have, but there was a ceiling to that match that was no fault of their own.
Yeah, I fully agree with that assessment. I think we're all going to have a different tune about Kikuta 48 hours from now when he and Masaki Mochizuki tear down Korakuen Hall. It's everybody just relax on the Madoka Kikuta discourse. I promise you it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Any more thoughts about the Dreamgate?
No, that's all I got.
Yep. So let's talk about this Yamato and Hiromu business now, as it is one of the highlight things on the show. Hiromu wins with a time bomb 2. This was the version of the match where Hiromu just won clean. And it wasn't a bad match. It just was not going to be the match that we were hoping for, or like it was the least interesting outcome, I would say.
That is true. It was certainly the least interesting outcome, just because there was, it's Yamato. There was always an idea that he could show up, win this match on a roll up and then work a New Japan show for the junior title. I really, it wasn't the front runner, but you can't rule something like that out. I enjoyed the match. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't see a lot of discourse about this, which I think makes me think people were disappointed by it. It was a fine match. I don't. It was fine. 3.5 stars.
Yeah, and I bought the Frankensteiner of the Almighty going
into
the finish.
Great tease.
Yeah, that was like, okay, that's what, if we're going straight to Hiromu wins clean, I'm glad that there was that tease that we all kind of bought into for it. There were moments of this match that I thought were kind of cute. Did you notice Yamato doing his old school Battleship hide under the ring trick?
I popped huge for it.
I love that. That was like when we were doing the DGUSA series, that was the thing that was like, oh, Yamato was so cool, was whenever he would pull off that. And it was a fun just highlight match. It was something that, like, I guess I was pretty low on it coming in here, and a lot of that just was like, okay, it's going to be 13 minutes Hiromu penning him clean, and that's what we got, but it was like mid-level going for it.
This all comes down to just what your expectation of the match was, and I thought, hey, maybe this will be like a 4-star match, but I didn't have match of the year sort of expectations in my mind. And if you did, I can see how this was a disappointment. To me, it was kind of what I thought it was going to be. I'll say this, and this is pure, unfiltered Dragon System jerk-off hour. I get that, and I acknowledge that up front. I liked that this match existed because it was interesting to me from a historical standpoint of like, oh, Hiromu is a New Japan System guy who is very clearly a product of a post-Dragon System world. He came through the dojo, he's had unparalleled success as a junior, but this isn't the next coming of Tatsumi Fujinami. This isn't even the second coming of Liger. This is a guy who was very clearly inspired by Shima and by Dragon Kid and by, Toryumon and Dragongate in the early days, and he's now doing it on the highest level. And for that reason alone, I like that this match existed. And again, that's pure jerk-off Dragongate stuff from a Dragongate fan, but I think it's worth pointing out. I thought that was very interesting watching this match.
Yeah, and it's something that when you think about excursions in New Japan, like they've had that CMLL relationship for so long, but at least during this modern era, Hiromu's excursion kind of was the big CMLL one, right? And it's easy to kind of see how some of those like post Dragongate tendencies could kind of happen with that. And he's a fascinating wrestler. Like, I find him sometimes a little bit too cute by half, but he's someone that like I like the paths and the stories that people kind of take. And I feel like that just like the overall Hiromu versus Dragon Lee feud, like that was something that I think could only happen like in a post Dragongate world in a way.
Here's a question for you, and I'm not trying to prove a point, but it's not a leading question. I'm just curious as to what your answer is going to be. You see right now in the dilapidated Japanese ecosystem. All Japan working with GLEAT. All Japan working with Noah. Nakajima versus Miyahara. You've got New Japan guys on All Japan shows. You see all of this camaraderie between the more mainstream friendly promotions. This match to me was Lek presents Yamato versus Hiromu. This was a money mark match paid for by the same guy that pays to have Tatsumi Fujinami and Leona on show after show after show. This was not New Japan partnering with Dragongate. Would you agree with that assessment? Is there anything that you would add to that? Because you're kind of the guy that I go to on a lot of this stuff. And it means nothing, but I also feel like it's worth maybe differentiating. Hey, New Japan's working with all of these promotions, and hey, Lek paid for this match between two guys that had a Twitter feud.
Yeah, this match came about probably because as they make good for having those guys on the Junior Festival. Like, yeah, like
100%.
So thinking that this is Dragon Gate and New Japan forming some sort of relationship, or the Sponge guy, you know, collecting another stone in his 2023 Promoter of the Year campaign. This was a neat thing, but this is something that I feel like could have happened without Mr. Nakamori existing. If there was a show that there was Yamato and a lot of Dragon Gate guys appearing at, I mean, it wasn't Yamato, just Yamato. It was Yamato, Dragon Kid, and Shun Skywalker. And you get Hiromu back. If the Sponge guy didn't exist and you heard this happen, Case, would you be surprised at like a sort of agreement that this would happen? You go send 3 guys for this one, but then you get one big guy back for your big show.
No, it makes sense just in the way we understand wrestling.
Right.
For whatever reason, I feel a need to say, hey, this isn't GLEAT and All Japan together. This isn't Nagata and All Japan. You know, this isn't New Japan, or I'm sorry, this isn't, Noah and All Japan doing everything they have to pop a Korakuen number with Nakajima Miyahara. This is something different. We need to look at this, again, in the same way that we look at Leona appearing on a show here and there. This was a money mark match, and I'm glad this match existed, but it's different than New Japan continuing to plant their seed and then later pillage all of these promotions they're working with.
Yeah, and this is kind of an aside. I've been rereading Stan Hansen's book, The Last Outlaw, for a show I'm going to be appearing on soon. And it's something that, like, reading how the business was conducted in the 70s, 80s, The Last Outlaw, Stan Hansen's autobiography, he has one of the more singular looks at wrestling at that era as being, like, up until Kenny Omega, and with the exception of the Funks, the biggest foreigner in Japanese wrestling history. And these kind of things, like, there's a lot of stories in that book about while he was under All Japan contract deciding, well, I need to go do some months up in New York or in Georgia because of X, Y, and Z. And I ended up doing that because of that. Like, this reminds me a lot more of that than, the situations you've laid out with All Japan or Noah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's a larger point there, but it's a point that I feel is worth making.
Absolutely so. Any other thoughts on the Dragon Gate Handsome battle?
No, again, it's fine. It's whatever. I'm way more into this Triangle Gate match, which I'm kind of itching to talk about.
Yeah, let's get into this. I thought that this was the best match on the show outside of the double main event. The Triangle Gate Gold Class are now the new Open the Triangle Gate champions after a gong and another new move from Kota Minoura. This guy has more moves and moves named than anyone else. This is the Golden Rose, Case, which is a Fire Thunder driver. He got it down on KZ, and boy, I came out of this with, like, Minorita being, like, one of, like, the hottest stars in the company.
This worked on every level. To me, this was the best match on the show other than the cage match. I went 4.25 on this, and I almost want to go higher in hindsight. I mean, this was, it was your classic Dragon Gate, Triangle Gate match. A lot of companies do trios matches. Nobody does them with the crispness and the crispness, not the Christmas, but the crispness and a flawless execution that Dragon Gate does. You could go 1 through 6 here, and just list the things that guys did that were great in this match. But I think the front-running talking point here has to be Minorita, and just once again finding a way to steal the show. This match was largely dedicated to him and Shimizu. I didn't realize until after the fact that they've had 5 singles matches with one another. I mean, I remember when Minorita debuted, when he was Takumi Hayakawa, they fed him to Shimizu quite a bit. I completely lost perspective on the fact that this is but an ongoing storyline. And here comes Minorita in this match, biggest show of the year, and he and Shimizu just go after one another this entire match. And they do big man versus little man, but in a way that's far more engaging than like a Rey Mysterio TV match. This was really good, really engaging stuff, and it was just the tip of the iceberg, really.
And like the way like Rita would work, just like the head scissors in this match was really kind of cool. The thing that got me about this, and I think this is like a not to be even further up the Dragon System butt right now. One of the good things, and one of the reasons why I think this match and why the Triangle Gate has worked so much over, the history of the promotion, is the fact that, and I thought that Jay brought this up on commentary, that this has been like a longer theme where like the two stables have been trading off this belt for this year, and it's just been little tweaks. It's like trying to figure out what like the best lineup is, and you're able to do that because you have these units, you have these relationships that you can go like, oh, so the gold class team of Minoura, Ben, and Hulk lost. Okay, let's plug in Rita, and Hulk and Ben are already tied up in a Twin Gate match. Doi, let's bring in Doi here, and then you have it on the other side with like big time basically adding JFK and be like, okay, this is who we're gonna go with the Triangle Gates. And I thought that made this such a satisfying match as well. Like the idea that like, okay, this is the current lineups going at it, and I thought that was really cool.
And Kamei continues to be such a welcome addition to these big matches. We talked about this a few months ago. We did a list of the best big match Dragon Gate wrestlers. And Kamei was a guy that I had to include in my top 5 because he's a guy that just seems to rise to the occasion, despite being an undersized junior heavyweight, not just a junior heavyweight, but an undersized one at that. He's a big room wrestler. Kamei is good in Kobe Sambo Hall, and he's good in Korakuen, but it's these big shows, and it's the big matches that he has where he seems to come alive, and, I can praise Minorita and Shimizu, but I can't get much further without mentioning, goddamn, Jackie Funky Kamei was just on another level in this match.
It's something that I think that when we look back, when Natural Vibes is done, we can look at Jackie Funky Kamei as evidence of how just important of a unit this is, because you look at the performances there and you could see shades of other people he's teaming with. Like I, for a long time, said, oh, he's teaming here so he can learn how to be a babyface, but there's a lot that goes on with that. You see the resilience of KZ and Genki Horiguchi into him. You could see his big arena match quality from like Susumu. And it's something that's finally like come together in this, that I wonder, like when we eventually have to talk about Natural Vibes in the rear view, maybe the biggest winner out of this, at least this era of it, is Jackie Funky Kamei.
Oh, I don't have a doubt about that. Think about who this guy has worked with. He spent time next to Genki and Susumu and KZ and Jason Lee. Without making the Strong Machine J pun here, he's worked next to machines for the last 2 years. The guys that put this company on their back and have for the last 2 decades. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Jackie Funky Kamei is the next Genki Horiguchi. And if people know my thoughts on Genki, that's one of the highest compliments I can give a wrestler. This guy's smart, he's talented, he's charismatic, and he's the kind of guy that is going to go to your village, and intentionally or not, he will recruit the next crop of Dragon Gate guys, because with all due respect to New Japan and Noah and All Japan and not GLEAT, they don't have Jackie Funky Kameis. Kamei, in his charisma, in his aura, is just unique to this promotion. And it's the same kind of thing that Genki had, and it's the same kind of thing that has existed since day one. And the fact that he is a marvelous wrestler on top of it is just the cherry on top, because he's a really special entity. And I give you credit. because you spotted this immediately. You know, I was deer in headlights on Kento Kabune and focused on how many titles he was going to win, not knowing it would be the IWRG middleweight championship if that exists. You called Kome, and you were exactly correct on what he can be.
And it's something like, it is so fun to see him do this. I mean, when we talk about his Kobe World performances, I mean, we don't have to look too far back when we're talking about someone who perhaps had the best match ever in this building. Like, we're talking, it's not that he's blossomed into this. Like, now we're seeing someone that, you know, over the last, like, really 18 months, if we want to go back 2 years with the SB feud over the Bravegate, this is someone that very quietly could be one of the top 100 wrestlers in the world, if not being the best junior heavyweight on a lot of rosters in Japan right now.
Oh, I mean, look, if he showed up in New Japan, if he showed up in GLEAT, if he showed up in Noah, he would blow people's minds. He's just another very talented guy in a very talented promotion, but he's the kind of guy that would be a game changer in any other junior division.
Yeah, but before we move on, want to throw a particular rose to Kota Minoura for doing one of the best flying high knees I've seen in like 10 years in this match. Like, he should drop the elbow and just do high knees. That's what he should be doing.
So I'm back in on Coach Minoura. Big announcement here. I like the haircut, and I thought he was great in this match. And this weekend, you've got Korakuen, and you've got the Mochizuki Produce Show, and you've got Osaka, a 3-day murderous stretch here. And Osaka's headlined by Doi versus Minoura in the first round of King of Gate. I'm backing on him. I thought he was so good in this match, and especially down the finishing stretch. It shook off the year's worth of rust that he's had, where I just, he was so de-emphasized for 6 months after World last year, and I wasn't buying into the first 6 months of this year for him. This match, I'm back in. Coach Minoura can be a guy, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to see now Natural Vibes having a rough Kobe World, where they go to from here. I mean, Casey and Shimizu without a title belt for what it feels like for the first time in a year.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yep. Twingate, Susumu and Kanda made a successful defense over BB Hulk and Benkei. It was a double rotation Yokosuka cutter on BB Hulk. Yasushi Kanda still having that year, I'd say.
I mean, he certainly wasn't bad in this match. It's a step down in quality from Twingate matches from last year. Is that a safe assessment?
I mean,
it wasn't one of the greatest matches of all time.
Yeah, and I mean, when we look at this match and the time it was given, it was not good. This one also did not really receive much time with it. It was a Twingate match that it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So the Twingate match only went 11 minutes. So it just, for what it was, I thought it was a lot of fun. Learning the factoid that Benkei goes tans at 11 o'clock at night is something that I'm never going to forget.
No, it's psychotic behavior. But nevertheless, you have this match. I said last week, hey, Kanda's been great this year. Hulk and Gold Class has been very good. But it's still a Twingate match that's going to be anchored by Kanda and Hulk. And that could go one way or another. And I ended up going 3 3/4 stars with this. I really thought this was a ton of fun.
I really liked how they worked Benkei's spear in this match. It became the focal point of it, where Benkei was going for an early spear. He speared the ring post at his psychotic bump that he does. No one does that bump anymore. It was him and Big E, and Big E's not wrestling right now. It's ludicrous that he does that. And from there, I thought that was really smart, going to the double countout tease and then another spear fake into a jumbo no kachi. I felt like that was the neat quirk in this match that made it from being adequate to being very good. I thought that it was really smart how they managed to work both teams' intricacies into a short match.
There was a comment in the Voices of Wrestling Discord about how BB Hulk with his haircut now looks like a Butch Joshi wrestler, and I was dying watching this match with that comment in my head, because BB Hulk looks like he belongs on the Sendai Girls roster. It looked like Ben and someone from Oz Academy against M3K. I don't know who said that. I was cracking up watching this match thinking about that. I just had to get that in there.
Yeah, that's yeah, because he went back to like the classic BB Hulk haircut, but at his age now,
but he has a mom bod. Like my God, I forget who said that. I'm so sorry. That murdered me. That was so good. Congratulations on that comment. It made me laugh so hard.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just because I finished watching Glate version 6, but right now my brain's just going Raiden Hagane nonstop right now.
Hey, so they're booking Hiromu. That's cool. That's great idea, guys.
Do you like how they found a way to book Sumo Hall and it's not going to be embarrassing for them, but it's not for a single member of that roster?
No, I mean, okay, so that show's gonna have
Kota Ibushi.
It's gonna have Ibushi and probably gonna be some MMA bullshit, right?
Oh, undoubtedly. Like, I think that if you're not automatically looking at like Ibushi versus either Fujita, Junior Hayato, or like Ibushi and Takanori Ito versus Shinya Aoki and Hikari Sato, then you don't follow G something, because that's what I expect.
So right now it's Hayato Fujita and Yu Izuka versus Minoru Suzuki and Shinya Aoki. So those guys are booked in a Ladette UWF double bout.
Yep.
So that takes a few of those guys off the table, but your heart is in the right place. Ibushi's going to be doing something like that. And then it's
Shinya Aoki's not booked.
No, he's teaming with Minoru Suzuki. It's Fujita and Izuka versus Suzuki and Aoki. But your heart's in the right place there.
They're going to bring in Shrek for him.
They're going to bring in Choi Hong Man.
I mean, he has not appeared in a Dragon System ring for a couple of years now.
No, he's fair game. He's like Naoki. He's like Naoki Tanizaki. He's fair game.
Except unlike the other one, he might get the call.
And Jesus. And then they're doing Hayashi, Minoru Tanaka, Ed Shima versus Hiromu, Etsuki Aoyagi, and Jun Tancho. Wonder who's taking the fall there.
And I love Jun Tancho. Jun Tancho rules. And I'm like, he's finally getting the focus here, but he's getting the focus because he's going to be eating a very sloppily done Meteora.
I was gonna say he's eating a swine so hard in this match.
Shima's not going up on the top rope.
It's gonna disrupt his personal life. Like, it's gonna be that intense.
That mustache that he has is going to be taken off by this match.
And then T-Hawk versus Hayato Tamura. So that's a Sumo Hall show that's going to exist.
Yeah. Well, they will probably get like 3,000 to 4,000 for that because of everyone else and not their roster. And everyone's gonna be like, "Look at Glade."
Yeah, I don't know. Ibushi being there feels so right and so wrong at the same time. I don't know how to parse through that in my mind yet. I guess it'll help when I see the match that he's in. And if they do him and Lindemann in a tag or something, okay, cool. But he's gonna be all kicky, and I'm not gonna be into it.
I was talking with someone about numbers earlier this week, and they brought up something that I think we had to prepare ourselves for. Now, this is just speculation, so like this. Case, do you know when Kota Ibushi debuted?
No.
July 1st, 2004.
Okay. Oh, okay. So 20th anniversary at a Gleat show?
Yep.
Hey, Shima always wins. Credit to him.
That person put the thought out of my mind. I was like, oh God, we finally found the people. Like, yeah, no, of course, there we go. If the company's around next year, they're going to have a big show on July 1st, and it'll be Kota Ibushi's 20th anniversary show.
But who shows up to an Ibushi show? Because I just thought about this with Shima, where it's like, okay, at least he has T-Hawk and Lindemann, and Don Fuji will probably be granted an appearance at that show. But who does Ibushi have that's in his corner? It's Nakazawa.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I can't think of anyone else. I mean, I don't think Shinshiro Takagi's coming out for that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think Kenny's flying out for that.
I don't think so.
Shima finally gets Kenny and a ring he books.
Yeah, no, that's a very good thought. I had not put that together. Well done by you and the person that thought of that.
Yeah. Last title match, Ishin is the new Open the Brave Gate champion as he defeats Jason Lee in 8 minutes 27 seconds with his modified swinging scrap buster. And so much for the next great foreigner Brave Gate run.
Yeah, there goes my prediction last week of Jason Lee will be Brave Gate champion entering 2024.
Yep.
You know, it is Jason's Brave Gate run was not what I wanted it to be, and I have to fight that because I wanted him to go out there and have time and have banger after banger after banger. And I felt with the Dragon Dia match at Dead or Alive that it was good, but it should have been longer. And then he had the La Estrella title defense, which I thought he did a remarkable job of leading Estrella to his best singles match ever. And then he had this, and this was a good match, 3.5 stars, but it was two things. One, it wasn't the match that I wanted it to be from just a quality perspective. It was good, it wasn't great. I also thought it was interesting how it was such an Ishin match. They really got Ishin over here as, essentially Dragon Gate's next Power Junior, which is an advantageous position to be. You can do a lot of different things with that. And props to Ishin. He figured this out, and I'm excited to see what he could do with that belt now.
Yeah, this was an Ishin match. He looked awesome. Like, new gear. I know the DTG guy designed his gear. It looked great. Like, he looked like how I'd want a Power Junior to look like. And he wrestled. This is like the thesis for Ishin as a Power Junior. I think he will do great. But as a Brave Gate match, this was underwhelming because of everything we've talked about. Got 8 minutes. This was an Ishin match. We're not... Like, this was not really a Jason Lee match, but I was still 3.25 on it. That swinging scrap buster is nasty, and I liked how they worked it with the they worked around the Kamada chokeslam. Like, it was still a match with substance with it. It just was not. They went in the direction we weren't expecting, and I think that's cool. But I will have in the back of my head, oh, what if it was going to be like, what if they gave Jason the belt and he saw the belt, and then next up he was going to get like a 15-minute match with a Kagetora who is into it because it's a title match. Like, we're missing out on that kind of stuff, and that's a bummer.
We're not going to go match by match when we do our King of Gate preview, but the first round match in what is the small town? They're doing Hamamatsu on Saturday, July 8th, and the show's headlined by Dia versus Jason Lee. What do you think they do with that? Where does Jason Lee go from here?
I think Jason kind of treads water until Natural Vibes is done, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. This was the payoff to 6 years of plucky underdog babyface. He was the last guy on the totem pole in Maximum. He was featured in the Dragon Gate generation. He was a bit more of a player in Masquerade, and then he came here and I would say for a long time has operated as the number 2 behind KZ in Natural Vibes. But now what do you do with this? I have a morbid interest in seeing Jason Lee as a heel, but I don't really think that's the route they're going to go. I would hope that you straddle him with a tag partner and see what he can do, but I don't know who that guy is, and I don't know if that's in Vibes or out. It's a weird time where you can continue to do the Jason Lee thing. And I think much in the same way I've always compared him to Roderick Strong, he existed as the same wrestler for a very long time, and he was so talented that he was able to do so. I don't know if this is the time you call for a change if he does something drastically new, or if Jason just puts his head down and continues to be the quality wrestler that he is. It's a really interesting time for him specifically.
Yeah, and the heel turn, I just wonder if he's really someone that you want to turn heel right now. I think he'd be a really cool heel. I think that, like, maybe I'd be interested if Natural Vibes remains an ongoing concern, see him and UT make a run at the Twin Gate. I think that would be fun. But I don't know if I think that's a step back for him almost.
If he turned heel tomorrow, you have the dynamic of he and Shun, and obviously Shun fought for him and he essentially kidnapped him, trying to get him into Z-Brats before he ended up in Vibes. you have that dynamic, which is interesting, but I don't see that being the move. It's a fun idea to explore. It's not an idea that I think is realistic. I think a tag team with UT, a match with Fuda, a match with Kagetora, I think that's where we're going to go down. But instead of being for the Brave Gate, it's going to be a 6-minute, second match on the card type deal, which I guess this Brave Gate match was, but for special circumstances.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Let's touch on the undercard. Really, the only undercard match that really had time was the Konamawa Ichikawa match because they had a restart. If you look at the rest of the match lineup, you'll be like 2 minutes opener, 6 minutes for the Mochizuki Kano versus Fuji and Kondo. Konamawa Ichikawa had 12 minutes, had 12 seconds, and then 5 minutes, and then a lot of stuff around it. What a great comedy match that was. I love this each year.
Yeah, so for those that missed it, Ichikawa versus X. Shingo's music hit, but Punch Tominaga came out and Shingo singlet. And then, of course, seconds later, Shingo comes out, big pop. They do the comedy match where Ichikawa loses immediately, calls for a rematch. They have a bit more of an extended match at that point. The spot of the match to me is they go to the floor. Ichikawa's on the ground. Maybe he's standing, I don't remember. Shingo does the rocket punch, the catapult with Punch Tominaga, and Ichikawa moves out of the way and Punch face plants on the ground. I laughed uproariously at that spot. That was the undoubted highlight. That was one of the best Ichikawa spots I've seen in a long time. That was just marvelous stuff.
I love that he hit the Inabauer once. Shingo was so stunned by it that the next time he was furious by it. Like he was still in shock. He was also angry. It was tremendous. It was exactly what you would want, and it played out how you would want it as well. Did you see that the new Oware Gate has been completed?
Oh no.
Oh, Susumu was just like sewing things onto like a belt, literally.
Of course
like
he was.
Yeah. But he made sure to include his tag on it.
Well, that will be decided this weekend at the Mochizuki Produce Show, which is Saturday night. I don't know if you noticed this, Mike, or I guess Friday night into Saturday, because it's July 8th. 10 p.m. Central start time for Mochizuki Produce. So I will be live tweeting that on the Open the Voice Gate account. I am stoked about that.
I don't think I'll have cell reception at that point. I'm going.
Where are you going to be? Cell reception?
I'm not going to be able to watch it. I'm going to be at a ranch.
Okay. All right. Sure.
With
I'll
my
take
new
your
cowboy
word for
boots.
It. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I'm a Texan. Come on.
I want a cell reception. What year are you in? Do you have no bars?
Texas is such a big state that like there are places that people live that there aren't cell towers.
That's a bad existence. I want no part of that.
Hey,
some people are like, I want to unplug. Not me. I'm good. I like my gadgets.
No, I don't blame you with that. Mochizuki Kano versus Fuji Kondo, corner kick PFS. There was a handshake offer by Mochizuki. Kano left it hanging. Yeah, this really wish we had the original pairs. Even if it was 6 minutes, but this was okay, I guess. Like it was like what it was not a classic Mochi Fuji match that we would see in this building.
This was disappointing. This was the one. Yamato versus Hiromu was fine. Kikuta versus Yoshioka was good, but not good enough. I wanted Jason versus Ishin to be better, but it was still good. This was the match where I went, I don't like this. This was a 3-star match that should have been a 4-star match. It never felt like it got going. It felt like they left a ton of stuff on the table on a show that had an immensely satisfying conclusion, and then a lot of stuff that was, it was good throughout. This was the one that I was massively disappointed by, because Kano up to this point hasn't missed in Dragongate. He's been great no matter what he does, and this was not a great match by any means.
Yeah, no, this was just disappointing. Like, there's a difference between the 2.5 stars I gave this one and the 2.5 stars I gave in the 2-minute opener. Like this, the ratings can mean two completely different things. Don't really have much to add to that opener. Dragon Dia, La Estrella, and Eita versus Kagetora, UT, and Taru Inohashi. Dragon Dia won with the DDT on UT. UT did the Hakari no Wa, and that's kind of all that happened in 2 minutes.
This was as good of a 2-minute match as you can get. I wanted this to go 12 minutes instead. I thought all of the pairings were super interesting, and it ended before it got going, which was a real bummer because I liked this match on paper and I liked the way it was executed as long as it existed.
Yeah, and it was something that's like, oh, Taro Unohashi stopped Eita's Tope Con Hello. Oh, wait, we're getting the finish right now. Like it was just like one of those things. Like, yeah, give it 10 more minutes, and that would have been something special. On the pre-show, we did not have this. This will be a future network upload. Don't know when, don't know why. But Shachihoko Boy, Takashi Yoshida, and Mondai Ryu defeated Genki Horiguchi, punched Tominaga and Ho-Ho Loon, and Z-Brats took out the rookie selection. It was Mochizuki Jr. and Ryoya Tanaka. That got 5 minutes. That got more minutes than the opener.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yep, but that was Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival. Case's written review, as we said, is recently up on voicesofwrestling.com. We've had a lot of stuff go up for Dragongate over the last few weeks in anticipation of Dragongate's biggest show of the year, but that's not all that's going on as we've been talking about. Let's go through this Corkin show before we get out of here.
Yeah, it's coming up on Friday. I will have a review at voicesofwrestling.com probably on Monday, because I don't want to publish anything late on Friday. That is the death slot. But yeah, please go through this card and we'll talk big picture King of Gate here real quick.
All right, opener, Natural Vibes, Jason, UT, and Jackie versus Z-Brats, Kai, Hyo, and Ishin. Tag team match, Genki Horiguchi and Takashi Yoshida versus Kaito Nagano, making a return in Daiki Yanagiuchi. King of Gate first round match, KZ versus Eita. King of Gate first round match, BB Hulk versus Punch Tominaga. Ultimo Dragon, Dragon Kid, and Don Fuji teaming against M3K, Susumu, Kanda, and Mochi Jr. 8-man tag, Yamato, Yuki Yoshioka, Dragon Dai, and Kagatora versus the entirety of Gold Class at this point. Naruki Doi, not a member, still going to come out to the entrance. Maybe he has the gold gear this time. Kota Minoura, Minorita, and Benkei. And then our last two King of Gate matches, Shun Skywalker versus Big Boss Shimizu. And then the main event, Madoka Kikuta versus Masaki Mochizuki.
You have to have enormous expectations for that main event. Those guys have never wrestled in a singles match. Mochizuki, historically, King of Gate Kinen Hall shows are his friend, and it's Madoka Kikuta. So, I mean, this is a loaded card when you look at it. I like the opener. I like the fact that Nagano and Daiki are teaming together. I think that's interesting. KZ versus Eita is match number 3. And this could be a 4-minute Eita who gives a shit fest. This could also be a great match. I have no real feel for it. And then, these last two matches, Shimizu and Skywalker and Kikuta versus Mochizuki, you could very easily be looking at the winner of this tournament with any of those 4 guys there.
Yeah, I really like the chemistry that Shimizu and Skywalker have when they're in the ring together. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, you just can't accurately predict that KZ and Eita match because it's an Eita match, and that can mean literally anything at this point. So, and then BB Hulk versus Punch Tominaga, we all know how that one goes. Going to be interesting to see that M3K tag. Like, out of the non-tournament matches, Ultimo coming in on that, Mochizuki Jr. getting back into getting his win back. I'm interested in seeing how that one goes.
Well, and even the match that follows it, Yoshioka and Daya and Kagatora and Yamato versus Gold Class with Doi. Those are very interesting pairings there. And that's match 6. That should be hot going into intermission. So this is a loaded Corkin show. You would hope that this does 1,100, 1,200, maybe even, we get our biggest house post-COVID and they hit the 1,300 range with this show. Because this is a loaded card with 2 big singles matches going on, second to last and last.
Yep, and then looking at the rest of the weekend, I'm just going to run through Hamatsu, just the King of Gate stuff. Dragon Kid versus Kagatora, Genki Horiguchi versus Suji Kondo, and then Dragon Daya versus Jason Lee. Those are our 3 tournament matches from Hamatsu, and I would guess that those 3 are going to be your YouTube upload. I think that's probably a fair assessment there. Want me to go through Osaka real quick?
Yeah, please.
So Osaka number 2. This is on the 9th. Dragongate Network. It's 6 o'clock local time start. Not going to be live tweeting this one, I guess, with it starting at 4 a.m. at Central Standard Time. We have a Natural Vibes versus M3K 8-man tag. KZ, Shimizu, Lee, and Kamei versus the entirety of M3K. Masaki Susumu and Mochizuki Jr. along with Yasushi Kanda. Takashi Yoshida versus Problem Dragon is your first Osaka King of Gate match. Ultimo, Dragon Kid, and Ginki versus BB Hulk, Minorita, and Ryoya Tanaka. That's fun. I like that. Yamato versus Don Fuji, your number 4 match in that building. D Courage versus Shun Skywalker, Hyo and Ishin. Kai versus Benkei, King of Gate, and then Kota Minoura and Naruki Doi. I really like that Osaka card.
Minoura versus Doi is something that really intrigues me. I'm really into Doi right now. Minoura, like I said, seems to be back with me. I am all for that headlining an Osaka show.
Yeah, and I mean, even D-Courage versus Z-Brats, that's a fun combo we have there. Maybe we get a little bit of... I don't want Dragon Dia to have a Brave Gate shot every single new Brave Gate run, but I immediately look at that match, Dia penning Ishin.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but you might be onto something there.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like the thing with these 2 shows is that we get 3 really strong looking King of Gate matches and then one that is just Yoshida versus Problem Dragon.
Yeah, like Jay said on Twitter, because we lost Diamante in this tournament, we were supposed to get Susumu versus Diamante at Korakuen as well. I really wish they would have put a young guy in there and just had them eat the loss, do Susumu versus Junior, Susumu versus Tanaka, Susumu versus Nagano even, just something there. And the same thing could be said, do I wish one of the young guys was in King of Gate instead of Punch or Problem Dragon? Yes, but Hulk versus Punch, Yoshida versus Problem Dragon, they'll be short. I'll move on with my life, and we'll go from there.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Any other last thoughts before we get out of here this week, Case?
Yeah, who's winning King of Gate? Tell me your 2 finalists and your eventual winner.
All right, I'm looking at the bracket now. I'm looking at... I think KZ has a run in him. I don't think he gets out of that side of the bracket.
And Shibata's winning the G1 this year?
Yeah, but I think KZ is semifinalist, probably losing to... Who is that there? That's Yamato and Don Fuji. I think that I could see arguments for Shimizu or Shun winning that block on that side of the bracket, and then on the other side, thinking Yamato. I feel like this is a time to kind of heat him back up after he's done with the Hiromu thing, and you could have him easily lose to someone in the finals, and it'll be fine. And especially, or if it's Diamante returning to cost Shun Skywalker King of Gate, and then Yamato winning, I think that's totally appropriate here. I don't think this is going to be a breakout year now that Diamante's out of it.
My finals prediction is 2 guys that could very easily lose in the first round of this tournament, but I not only think they're winning that, I think they're winning everything. My finals prediction this year, Big Boss Shimizu versus Coach Minoura, your King of Gate winner, Big Boss Shimizu, and we will do Kikuta versus Shimizu at Dangerous Gate in the main event.
Yeah, that's a good, safe Dangerous Gate main event.
He cut a promo calling out the Reiwa 6, and then nothing came of that, and I will drop it after King of Gate, but I am hoping that it is paid off in King of Gate.
Yeah, and you look at how it is. So Shimizu would have to face Strong Machine, would face Shun in the first round. He would have potentially faced Strong Machine J in the second round, and then probably Benkei in the quarterfinals. That's basically all of the big 6.
And it could be Madoka Kikuta in the semifinals.
Right, yeah. So it really could be something that he stakes his claim from that at. Shimizu is a good shout there.
That's what I'm looking at here. Is again Shun, ideally Strong Machine J could be Kanda, Benkei, and then in the semifinals Kikuta, and that leads him to Minoura on the other side of the bracket. And there you go. He's run through all these guys. He's got his win against Kikuta, and there's your Dangerous Gate main event.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, that's going to do it for this Kobe World Review edition of Open the Voice Gate. Thanks for everyone for sticking with us this week. Having a little bit of a later one, but we'll be back with you on Tuesday talking about this big week. And usually we have like this nice little break case after Kobe World. Like usually there's like a week or two before it's into the second half schedule, but we don't get that this year. This calendar is wild.
No, we got 4 shows this week, and we got Korakuen, we got Mochi Produce, we've got a Hamamatsu King of Gate show, and then Osaka number 2.
And we'll be back next week talking all about it. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. Cases at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. Thanks for listening to Open Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next week talking about King of Gate Kickoffs. Take care, everyone.
Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if 2 people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.